Chapter 106. Tani asked curiously, "Isn't it?" Tanaska was speechless, glared at her, and said, "Just wait and see." After speaking, he turned his head and looked around, saw the shopkeeper standing at the corner of the room behind the counter doing accounts. He immediately pulled Xiao Huan and walked over. The shopkeeper felt someone was walking in front of him. He raised his head and was about to greet. Suddenly he was startled. A surprised expression appeared on his face. Tanaska smiled. He looked like a celestial being, very much like a Taoist master, said, "Shopkeeper Wang, do you still remember me?" That shopkeeper Wang cried out in surprise, actually ran out from behind the counter, his face extremely respectful and cautious. His expression was even more pleasantly surprised, making Xiao Huan at the side dumbstruck. He said, It's you, old immortal. Why are you here? AI, this has been 30 years. I have always missed you." Tanaska smiled. His temperament was outstanding. He lightly brushed the dust on his clothes, said, "I am not a common person. These years I've been traveling around the world. Even went to famous mountains in fairyland, visited celestials, absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. How could I have time to come here?" Tani fell to the ground, but shopkeeper Wang looked like he believed it, nodded. Yes, old immortal. Of course you are different from us common people." Then he asked Tanaska and Tani to sit at a clean table, hurriedly called the waiter to serve the best tea. Tanaska smiled, looked around, said, "Seems like these years, your business must be doing well." Shopkeeper Wang respectfully said, "Yes, thanks to you." Tanaska coughed, said, "This time I came here, I want to leave the Eastern Sea to visit a friend. I remembered that I have a predestined relationship with you, so I came to have a look. Then I'll stay here tonight." Shopkeeper Wang nodded, said, "Of course, you must give me face. I was planning to let my wife and children come and visit you." Tanaska laughed, put his hand into his bosom, said, "Then how much does one night cost?" Manager Wang immediately shook his head, said, "Look at what you are saying. You came to my place. I can't wait to come. How can I take your money?" Tanaska's hand was still in his bosom, shook his head and said, "AI. Shopkeeper Wang, I know I gave you a few pointers back then, but I can't break the rules when you're doing business." Shopkeeper Wang was a little agitated and said, "Old immortal, look at this. If it wasn't for you pointing out the right path and letting me—" At this point, he suddenly looked around and lowered his voice. "If it wasn't for you letting me plant the tree of wealth in the dragon cave of the Eastern Sea, how could I have made money for 30 years? You're here to stay. If I still take your money, I'll be struck by lightning." Tanaska smiled and took out his hand, said, "If so, it would be impolite of me to refuse." Shopkeeper Wang nodded and chatted for a while. The waiter came back and said the room was prepared. Shopkeeper Wang stood up and personally escorted Tanaska and Xiao Huan to the room. Along the way to the back hall, the building was built strangely, 3 stories high but hexagonal in shape. In the middle there was a big empty courtyard, paved with green stone slabs. Maybe because of the long years, green grass could be seen everywhere in the cracks of the stones. At the center, there was a lone birch tree, but its branches and leaves were withered and bony. Shopkeeper Wang escorted them to a secluded room on the 3rd floor, sat with them for a while, then left. Before he left, he promised to invite Old Immortal for a big meal at night, and so on. Old Immortal, of course, made excuses, said he had attained Tao for many years and had not been involved in the affairs of the mortal world for a long time. But Shopkeeper Wang was cordial and sincere. In the end, Old Immortal reluctantly agreed because of his granddaughter Xiao Huan. After Shopkeeper Wang left, Xiao Huan closed the door, leaving only Tanaska and her in the room. Tanaska laughed, said, "So what?" Xiao Huan asked, "Did you really want to pay him? What if he really took your money?" Tanaska righteously said, "So what? Tanaska, am an enlightened immortal. Why would I care about those worldly possessions?" Xiao Huan snorted, said, "Don't give me that. You think I don't know? You have no money in your pocket." Tanaska was shocked, said, "What did you say?" Xiao Huan said, "The money you have on you is divided into 3 parts. One is hidden on your belt, one is in your boot, and the last one is hidden in your immortal guides the way cloth gown. You think I don't know? You don't even have a penny in your pocket." Tanaska was startled. His face blushed, said, "You little devil, how do you know everything?" Xiao Huan glared at him, said, "What did you lie to him 30 years ago?" Tanis Ka angrily said, "Nonsense, when did I lie to him?" Xiao Huan snorted, said, "Don't give me that. East Sea Dragon Cave is the source of the sea, the spirit realm of heaven and earth. It is definitely under the sea. How can it be in the mortal world? Your words can only deceive honest people like shopkeeper Wang." Tanis Ka smiled embarrassedly, but then he sighed, with a sense of vicissitudes of life and desolation. Xiao Huan frowned, said, "What is it?" Tanis Ka was silent for a moment, said, "Actually, this is related to your father." Xiao Huan was surprised, said, "My father? Didn't he pass away 20 years ago?" Tanis Ka nodded, said, 30 years ago, I brought your father, who was still a teenager, to Changi City. Although he was young, but just like you, he was really talented in physiognomy. At that time, shopkeeper Wang was only a waiter in a common inn, but your father said he had a good physiognomy, broad and flat forehead, square face without edges, big eyes without hooks, a peaceful life, can make a fortune safely. So speaking to this point, he laughed and continued. I found a time and secretly gave him some pointers. I said that as long as he planted a white birch tree on the Eastern Seas Dragon Cave, with a FA character, he would certainly have good fortune. So, Xiao Huan continued, so he did as you said and really made a fortune, opened this big inn. Business is booming. He thought that it was all because of your advice, right? Tanis Ka laughed. Xiao Huan glanced at him, said, "But I am curious. You told him about the East Sea Dragon Cave. Where is it?" Tanis Isian raised his brows, smiled, and said, "You come here." Then he pulled her to the window, pointed down, said, "Isn't that it?" Xiao Huan was shocked, looked down and saw that he was pointing at that half-dead birch tree. Asked in surprise, "It's here? How come this tree looks half-dead?" Tanis Ka said, "Nonsense. If your tree is planted on greenstone, can it live well?" Xiao Huan was speechless. Tanis Ka looked at the sky leisurely, said, "Today's sky is so gloomy. I'm afraid it is going to rain tonight." The night was getting darker. It began to rain in the evening. Even when everything was quiet, it still had no intention of stopping. Bailu stayed in the upper room of the third floor. Sha Danan and Onara stayed in the lowest floor. After the rain, the air was a bit moist. Sha Danan tossed and turned, could not fall asleep. But there was a very obvious reason. Stone was asleep, but that rough and strong man's snores actually matched his figure extremely well. Even if it couldn't be said to be world-shaking, it still made this bed rumble faintly. Sha Danan sighed, sat up, and put on his clothes. He sat in the darkness for a while, then opened the door and walked out. In the dark night, the yard he was in was also bottomless. He didn't know where the dim light came from, but it brought about a faint light that allowed him to see the faint shadow of a white birch tree standing in the rain in the depths of the courtyard. He raised his head, looked at the sky, took a deep breath. The cool and slightly cold air rushed into his chest. Even though he was standing in the corridor, the wind outside had sent thin strands of rain into his face. He turned around and closed the door behind him. Then he strolled along the circular corridor. The night was deep, the wind was howling, the rain was heavy. The rain fell from the sky, hit on the green stone of the yard, splashed the water. Between the roof of the hallway, the rain gathered into a stream, gently flowed down like a small waterfall. Along the way, it was like he was walking in a deep and quiet water cave. Also, like not long ago in the young man's memory, there was a night like this night. In the unknown place in the darkness, there was a low sigh. The wind blew past, and with a woo sound, the rain that filled the sky also slanted just like that. Sha Danan's clothes were wet in a few places, but he did not care, only looked ahead in surprise. In the wind and rain, someone was holding an umbrella, quietly standing under the tree in the rain. Her eyes were like water, moving, as if she heard something, felt something. That woman turned her head. The sky was silent. The wind and rain were silent. He and the woman looked at each other in silence. The wind and rain was still blowing, falling. Chapter 107. The night was deep. The wind and rain were blowing. The leaves that came from nowhere were gently floating in the wind and rain. Under the green umbrella, her clothes were gently fluttering. A few strands of black hair were sticking to her white cheeks. Shah Danon stood where he was, but at that moment, he was confused. In this foreign land, in this strange place, there was a familiar wind and rain. He slowly walked over and walked into the wind and rain. Behind him, in the darkness, there was a pair of deep eyes, silently watching him. As he got closer, the whole world seemed to quiet down. Her eyes were right in front of him. So gentle. Why haven't you gone to sleep? Shah Danon asked slowly. Viola did not answer, only looked at him. Her eyes were like water, reflecting his shadow. The rain gradually soaked his clothes. From his hair, it slowly condensed into small and sparkling water droplets, flowing through his black hair, gently dripping down, sliding down his face. What about you? She asked back. Why haven't you gone to sleep? Shah Danon was silent for a moment, then said, Onara snores when he sleeps. The sound is too loud. I can't sleep. Bayao was startled for a moment, then giggled. Her eyes moved. The faint light surrounding her seemed to suddenly brighten up. In Shah Danon's eyes, she was like a lily that bloomed in the rain at night. She smiled, held out her hand, and held Shah Danon's hand. Shah Danon couldn't help but step forward. In the wind and rain, the small green umbrella was placed on top of his head. Under the umbrella, it was her soft breathing. Shah Danon's heart suddenly sped up. He moved his eyes away from her, but the faint fragrance that seemed to come from her body surrounded him. Tomorrow, you're going to Billows Hill? Bailu asked quietly. Shah Danon's heart moved, said, Yes. Then he lifted his head and looked at her. What about you? Bailu smiled faintly, said, I'm going too. Shah Danon's face changed, frowned. Don't be childish. There are a lot of righteous there. My master's temper is even worse. It will be dangerous for you to go. Bila did not say anything, only silently watched him. Shah Danon felt uneasy, but he could not say anything. He thought it was not good to stand in the rain with her in the middle of the night. So he said, Then I will go back first. Bila did not answer. Shah Danon left her side and walked back. But when he was halfway, behind him, in the rain, her voice suddenly came. Xiao Fan. Shah Danon startled. This was the first time Bailu called him so intimately. He slowly turned around. The wind and rain between them seemed to be stronger, so Bai Yao's face also seemed to be a little blurry, but her voice was still so clear. When I was standing here alone, I was thinking actually if both of us die in Blood Drop Cave, unable to escape, that is not bad. Shah Danon's body shook, then forced a laugh. Don't joke around. Then he quickly walked away. Bila looked at his back, slowly lowered her head, softly said with a voice that only she could hear, At least I will not regret. Shah Danon walked into the corridor, left the wind and rain. His heart was relieved. For some reason, facing Bailu, this beautiful falcon girl, he always felt an inexplicable nervousness. Perhaps this was the pressure brought by her identity. He sighed, but couldn't help but look back. The girl was still standing in the wind and rain. He shook his head, then returned to his room. Not long after he left, Bailu, holding the green umbrella, also walked up to him. She stood on the corridor, watching the direction he left, silent. At this moment, in the darkness behind her, the darkness suddenly moved. A woman dressed in black, even her face was covered with a black veil, walked to her side. Bailu turned, said lightly, Aunt Nigar. The woman in black looked at the direction Shah Danon left, said with a calm and emotionless voice, Let's go. Your father is waiting for you at Billows Hill. Bila nodded slowly. Early morning, Shah Danon, who finally fell asleep, was awakened by Onara's loud voice. Brother Zhang, wake up. Shah Danon struggled to open his eyes. Onara was full of energy. Apparently, he slept very well last night. He smiled bitterly, did not say anything. He got up and went to the basin to wash his face with sleepy eyes. Onara sat on his bed, smiled. Brother Zhang, not that I want to criticize you, but you are so young and also a cultivator. After a night, you should be refreshed. But you look like you did not sleep for the whole night. Shah Danon said in his heart, With you here, who can sleep? But on the surface, He could only nod with a bitter smile. After they finished washing, Onara pulled Shah Danan and prepared to leave with Bailu. Shah Danan secretly frowned. He was really unwilling, but it was not good to tell Onara. Unexpectedly, after knocking for a long time, no one answered. They went to the manager and asked. It was Bai Yao who had settled the bill last night and also calculated their accommodation fee. Onara startled, then shook his head, feeling strange. Shah Danan stood at the side, calculated in his heart. For what Manager Wang said, she left not long after he and Baila parted. In fact, Shah Danan was worried about what to do if Bailu wanted to go to Billows Hill with him. But now she suddenly left without saying goodbye. His heart was confused. Onara came to discuss with Shah Danan, but Manager Wang looked at him a few more times, suddenly said, "May I ask, sir, is your name Onara?" Onara, startled, said, "Yes. How do you know?" Shopkeeper Wang had a happy expression on his face. He took out a letter from under the counter and said, "This was sent to me by a guest this morning." He said that it was for a tall and sturdy young man named Shirtu. "That must be you, dear customer." Onara took the letter and saw his name was written on the envelope. He opened it. Shah Danan also turned around and looked at him. Onara frowned, said, "Master." Shah Danan was surprised, asked, "What happened to your master?" Onara shook his head. "Don't know, but this letter is from my master. He wants me to go to Earth Temple at the west of the city to see him. Brother Zhang, I think we need to separate for now." Shah Danan nodded, said, "No problem, you go. I also need to go to Billows Hill to see my master and others." Onara smiled. "Wait until I see master and tell him. Most likely he will also go to Billows Hill. We will see each other then." Shah Danan had spent a lot of time with him. He felt a little close to him. He smiled. "Okay." Onara nodded, turned and left. Shah Danan sent him to the door of the tavern. His tall figure disappeared into the crowd. He stood there, startled for a moment, then turned and walked to the east alone. After they were far away, Tanis Ka and his granddaughter Tani slowly came out from the main hall of Sea Cloud Tower. Tani whispered, "That was close, almost met my enemy." Then she glared at Tanis Ka, said, "Isn't it all because of you, Grandpa? No matter where you go, you will meet people who are tricked by you. I think the most wrong person in the world is probably me." Tanis Ka rolled his eyes at Tani, ignored her. Manager Wang saw the old immortal came out. He came to greet him and serve the tea and dishes. Tanis Ka did not stand on ceremony. He sat down with Tani and chatted with Manager Wang. Manager Wang said, "Old immortal, do you know? I heard something big happened outside of Chong last night." Tanis Ka, startled, asked, "What happened?" "I'm not too sure," Manager Wang replied. "But I heard that these days the righteous path cultivators who have gathered here met the devil cult people on the west side of the city last night. Both sides fought fiercely. I heard the people at the west said that even the city wall was shaking." Tanis Ka was surprised. The Falcon and the righteous are fighting? Manager Wang shrugged his shoulder, said, "The news came in the morning, but most likely it is not fake." Then he said with concern, "Old immortal, the righteous are all cultivators. I heard the Falcon will not find trouble with us commoners. But your cultivation is high. If someone asks you to punish the Falcon, you must be careful." "Pooh." Tani couldn't help but spit out the tea she was drinking. Tanis Ka stared at Tani. Tani tried to hold back her laughter. Seeing Manager Wang looked at her with concern, she struggled to keep her normal tone and said, "Ah, Shopkeeper Wang, I'm fine, it's just, hee, I choked when drinking water, hee, choked." East Sea Lubo Hill, Note 1, 7,000 li into the sea, is this world's easternmost place. Further away is the boundless sea, boundless. This place was very secluded. Naturally, there was no one around. But a few days after Shah Danan and others entered Kongsang Mountain, the Falcon suddenly appeared. Within a few days, dozens of cultivation factions were destroyed by the Falcon. The world was shocked. The Falcon rose again after 800 years. Jade, Sky Song Temple, Incense Valley, and the other righteous factions hurriedly discussed. At this moment, news came from Incense Valley. A large number of Falcon were gathering at the East Sea Billows Hill. What is it for? Chapter 108. Righteousness is the most important. The people of righteousness were filled with righteous indignation. Not long after, with the three big sects taking the lead, they sent out their elite disciples, led by the elders with profound cultivation, to the East Sea Lubo Hill. On the way, many righteous people joined in, intending to wipe out the heretics for the benefit of the world. On the way, Shah Danan purposely inquired about what happened. The blood in his chest rose, and the idea of going to East Sea was firmer. But in the extreme east, the journey is very far. The Falcon chose this place, most likely because they saw Central Plains as a rich land, but also the place where the three factions are deeply rooted, so they are willing to go to the remote island. But they never expected the righteous are prosperous, and in the hearts of the righteous, righteousness is the most important. From far away, they still want to destroy them. On the way, Shah Danan was in a hurry. Aside from resting, he rode on the fire stick and flew in the air. After about 2 days, he left the sea. At first, he could see some small islands, but after another 10 days, he could only see the blue sky, the blue sea. The sky was high, and the clouds were light. Often he kept flying for a day and a night. The sea was clear and blue. If not for the waves, it was like a beautiful crystal. But there was no shadow of the island under his feet. Shah Danan was dumbfounded in midair. The sea breeze blew on his face, but his heart was anxious. Today he had flown out of East Sea for 10 days. This time, he could not find an island to rest for a day and 2 nights. He could not believe he got lost in the vast sea. But these days he lived in the open, nothing else, but his ability to fly had greatly improved. He was not as nervous as before. At this moment, he looked up at the sky, then looked down at the blue sea under his feet. He could not help but smile bitterly. While he was lost in thought, Shah Danan suddenly heard a clear bird cry in front of him. He raised his head and saw it was a white seagull flying above the sea. Shah Danan's heart moved. At the beginning of the sea, he saw many seagulls, but when he flew far, the seagulls could not catch up, so he could not see them anymore. Unexpectedly, seabirds could be seen in the depths of the sea. It seemed that there must be an island nearby. Thinking of that, Shah Danan became excited. Without hesitation, he flew toward the direction of the seagull. The boundless sea was vast and boundless. On the distant horizon, the sea and the sky merged into one, creating a picturesque scene. As he flew through the air, he suddenly felt like he was out of this world. He felt carefree and relaxed, as if he had become one with the world. After flying for another hour, a small island appeared in front of them. Looking down from the sky, the entire island was lush with vegetation. The seawater near the island was clear and azure, like crystal clear blue jade. Shah Danan flew for a long time. His body was a little tired. He landed on the island with the fire stick and rested for a while. Once his feet landed on the ground, Shah Danan looked around. The scenery on the ground was different from when he was in the sky. It was clearer. The clear seawater washed the pure white beach in waves. Near the sea, there was a type of tree that didn't exist in the Central Plains. The tree trunk was tall, but it didn't have any side branches. It pierced straight into the sky, with only a large number of branches and leaves at the top of the tree. Under the branches and leaves, there was a fruit that was the size of a child's head. As they went deeper into the island, apart from the tall trees, the low shrubs also gradually flourished. The forest was dense, but there was no road. It seemed like no one had come here for thousands of years. Above his head, the seagulls were chirping and circling above the island. The fresh sea breeze blew from the sea, very cool. Shah Danan took a deep breath. In this desolate and lonely place, a sense of tiredness came. He looked around. There was nothing strange. He found a clean place, lay down with his clothes on, and soon fell into a deep sleep. This sleep was quite sweet. The island was quiet, except for the tide and sea breeze. There was nothing strange. Naturally, no one will come to disturb him. Shah Danan slept until dusk. Then he woke up. He stretched, stood up, and walked to the beach. He looked into the distance. The sea scenery at dusk was very different from the daytime. The sunset was like blood. At the west coastline, it reflected a large patch of clouds and seawater. Clouds rose into the air, forming all sorts of shapes and transformations. The sea breeze blew from a sea. Shah Danon could not help but open his arms and took a deep breath. A comfortable feeling filled his body. In this paradise-like place, it was as if his whole body had relaxed. At that moment, he could not help but think, if he can live in this peaceful place, accompany Ling Er Shiji every day, watching the beautiful sunset, his life will not be in vain. Thinking of Hidi, Shah Danon's heart was warmed again. Since he left the mountain, it had been more than a month. Since he entered Jadian, he had never been separated from Shiji for such a long time. Now on this quiet island, and thinking that Shiji might be on another island nearby, Shah Danon's heart was immediately stirred, unable to calm down. After standing there for a long time, his fluctuating heart slowly calmed down. Then he heard goo-goo. His stomach was hungry. Shah Danon smiled bitterly. Since he was trapped in Kongsang Mountain's Blood-Drop Cave, he seemed to get hungry very easily. Fortunately, he still had enough dry rations on him. It was just that he didn't have much water left. Shah Danon looked around. His eyes finally landed on the fruits of the tall trees. He rose up and picked a few. Unexpectedly, the fruit shell was very hard. Shah Danon smashed it on the stone for dozens of times before it broke. But what came out was white juice. Shah Danon was overjoyed. He drank the fruit in one breath. Although it was a little astringent, the taste was sweet. It was a rare good. With this natural delicacy, Shah Danon was satisfied with his meal. Seeing the sky was getting dark, he decided to continue his journey tomorrow. At this time, the sky gradually darkened. The sea breeze blowing on his body also became colder. Shah Danon frowned, walked to the forest, but hesitated. He did not go in. He found a place to hide from the wind and lay down to rest. The night was getting darker. The moon rose from the east. The stars in the sky were like naughty children, jumping out one by one, blinking their eyes in the night sky. After sleeping for most of the afternoon, Shah Danon could not fall asleep. He tossed and turned. He could not help but remember what Wanren Wang said to him at the tea house. He picked up the fire stick at his waist, reflecting the faint light of the stars in the sky. The originally black fire stick emitted a faint pale green light, especially the red blood vessels inside. Right now seemed to have a life of their own, as if there was fresh blood flowing inside. Is this what Wanren Wang mentioned? My blood essence? Shah Danon murmured in his heart. All kinds of feelings rose in his heart. He could still clearly remember the scene in the deep valley. Sinister orb sucked out a large amount of blood from his palm. Shah Danon's body trembled. He shook his head, did not want to recall the past. However, this magical treasure was still so clearly in front of him, and even that unique cold feeling was still so familiar as it swam in his body, as if it was a part of him. That day, even though he had spoken to Wanren Wang in a dignified manner, when it came to himself, he still did not feel so good. After all, it was not easy for a little disciple like him who grew up in a famous faction to suddenly accept that his Esper was a Falcon evil item. Thinking of this, he could not help but look at the fire stick again. Seeing the blood veins that were getting clearer, he thought, this Esper, how many souls had died? The blood in it probably also hid many souls. He could not help but shudder. But he suddenly thought, if what Wanren Wang said was true, then what is the Retribution Ancient Sword in Mount Jadian's Peak of Widows? The righteousness and evil in this world, is it really like what his master in Shixiang's taught, existing since ancient time, never changing? Suddenly, an unprecedented thought appeared in his mind. Who was it that said that the righteous path must be righteous? Thinking of this, Shah Danon suddenly jumped up. Without hesitation, he closed his eyes and slapped himself heavily on his face, loudly said, Bastard! Damn it! How dare you have such rebellious thought? Note 1. Classics of Mountains and Seas, 9th volume of Barren East. In the East Sea, there's Billows Hill, 7,000 miles into the sea. On it, there's a beast shaped like a bull, without horns, one leg. When it comes out, there will be wind and rain. Its light is like the sun and moon. Its sound is like thunder. Its name is Kuei. Huang Emperor obtained it, used its skin as a drum, used it as the bone of the thunder beast. Its sound can be heard for 500 miles, and its name is Kuwei. Chapter 109. After slapping himself, Shah Danon stood there, couldn't help but gasp for breath. After a long time, he calmed down, then shook his head, smiled bitterly, said to himself, Shah Danon, who do you think you are, a little disciple of Jade, dare to doubt the righteousness passed down by the founder, really overestimating yourself. Jade has been passed down for 2,000 years, admired by the world, of course it is right. How can you doubt it? Thinking of this, his mood immediately relaxed. Although it was to comfort himself, it was very effective, so he no longer thought about this problem and peacefully lied down. Unexpectedly, before he could lie down properly, he suddenly heard an extremely sharp sound of something tearing through the air above the island that was originally so quiet that only the sound of tides and sea breeze could be heard. Shah Danon immediately jumped up, lifted his head, and saw a white light like a summer meteor flying across the sky. Behind it, there were several other lights, red, yellow, and white. Shah Danon knew it was the cultivators fighting in the sky, and it was obvious that one person in front was escaping and the people behind were chasing. In this desolate place, there was no one, but now there were people fighting in the sky. It must be the righteous and the falcon fighting here. Shah Danon had been searching for many days in the vast East Sea. His heart was anxious. Now he was overjoyed. One of the two must be the righteous. Without hesitation, he pointed with his incantation. The fire stick rose into the sky. The fire stick carried Shah Danon, making a woo sound in the boundless night, rushed to him. But the people in the sky didn't seem to think that there would be people on this desolate island. The people running in front thought that it was an ambush, and the people chasing behind also subconsciously thought that it was a trap set by the enemy. They all shouted. The white light in front turned around, the red light, yellow light, and white light turned around and hit Shah Danon. Shah Danon was surprised, immediately fell into the predicament of being attacked from both front and back. But those espers were so fast, there was no time for him to explain. He stopped his body in midair, fell down like a stone. The four people from the two sects in the sky seemed to be experts. Their reactions were extremely fast. In just a moment, they clearly understood the situation. Each of their magical treasures paused for a moment in the air, then unexpectedly followed them down one after another. Like an awl attached to the bone, they pursued relentlessly. But among the two factions, there were a few people whispered with doubt. Apparently they found the other side was the same as them, wanted to kill this uninvited guest. Poor Shah Danon became the innocent victim, suddenly being chased by four espers. If he is not careful, his head will be separated from his body. Hearing the wind behind him was getting closer, Shah Danon gritted his teeth. He knew he could not avoid it, so he turned around in midair. The four lights were coming at him like lightning. He shouted. The fire stick glowed with green light, blocked the attack in front of him. Bang! A loud sound spread far away from the calm sea. The four beams of light were reflected back. Shah Danon and the fire stick fell heavily from the sky into the water. Plop! The water splashed high into the air. Huge ripples spread out layer by layer on the surface of the water. The four people in the sky stopped running and stopped chasing. Both sides faced each other in midair for a moment. They all faintly felt that there was something strange about the attack just now. After a while, a person slowly floated up from the surface of the water. From the looks of it, he had fainted. The four people in the sky descended at the same time. They carefully approached the surface of the water under the starlight. They finally saw the person in the water. Xiao Fan. Two exclamations came from the two people at the same time. Soaking in the cold sea water, this feeling made Shah Danon thought he was still in the heartless sea under Kongsang Mountain's forsaken abyss, still under the ground where the sun cannot be seen. But why there are such bright stars in the sky? He shook his head, sobered up, turned his head, and looked around, saw that he was half lying on the shore. Far away on the beach stood four people. On one side was a girl in green, on the other side was a girl and two men. Looking at their clothing, they were actually from Qinyan's sect. Shah Danon focused his mind, looked at the woman and two men. The two men were familiar. They were to Xixiang Xavion and 6 Xixiang Amanla. The woman's face was like a painting, dressed in red. Her face was so familiar. At that moment, he felt his blood was boiling, his mind was buzzing. He could not think of anything else. He stared at that place, shouted, "Shiji!" The red-dressed woman turned her head, smiled sweetly. Suddenly, the lonely island, the bleak night, seemed to brighten up. "Brat, I knew you will not die so easily." What words can describe that kind of fanaticism? Shah Danan felt thousands of words were stuck in his heart. Endless longing, all the pain, all the longing of these days at the moment of life and death rushed up. Looking at the beautiful, smiling girl, his heart suddenly felt sour. Tears came out. "Shiji, Shiji, Shiji." He repeated it countless times in his heart. Now she suddenly appeared in front of him. He could not see anyone else. Until an angry shout came. "Shah Danan, you bastard! You won't even look at me?" Shah Danan was surprised. Not only him, it seemed like Hede and the other 3 were also surprised. Shah Danan regained his consciousness, turned his head and looked. The surprise was no small matter. The moonlight was like water. The sky was full of stars, coldly shining on the beach of the island. There was a girl in water-green dress, anger on her face, skin whiter than snow, eyes like water, staring at Shah Danan hatefully. If it is not Bailu, who else could it be? Shah Danan was a little nervous facing her. Even his tongue was not smooth. He murmured, "You, why are you here?" Baiyao stared at him hatefully, but did not reply. Her eyes then glanced at Tian Linger's face, saw that Tian Linger was indeed beautiful and had an outstanding appearance. A ball of fire ignited in her heart. That day at Changhe City's Haiyin Lu, Baila met her father outside of the city after leaving with the black dress girl. Then she followed her father to Billows Hill in the East Sea and met up with others. They were preparing to do a big thing on Billows Hill. At the same time, the righteous also came. Both sides had been facing each other on Billows Hill for several days. Calculating the time, Bailu thought Shah Danan should have arrived. After the life and death experience in Forsaken Abyss's Blooddrop Cave, plus the time they spent together on the journey, Bailu had a strange concern for this normal Jadian disciple. This day was bright and clear, but she suddenly could not hold it any longer. She didn't want to see Shah Danan again. She sneaked out and went to Jadian's residence. She could not find Shah Danan, but Hede and others found her and chased after her. In fact, Shah Danan should have arrived at Billows Hill during this period of time. But no one could expect the first time Shah Danan went out, he lost his way in the East Sea and wasted a lot of time. Bailu arrived a few days earlier than him. This night, she unexpectedly met Shah Danan on this island. Bailu's heart was overjoyed. She also felt apologetic for accidentally injuring him. But when Shah Danan woke up, before she could see if he was injured or not, the first thing she saw was that Brat's soul flew away when he saw his Shiji. He did not even know who she was. Bailu's anger immediately rose. There was no apologetic. She wished she could grab this brat and beat him up first. Shah Danan looked at Bailu, saw her angry look, then turned to his Shiji. He saw Hede and his 2 Xixiangs were wide-eyed. Their faces were filled with confusion. He was caught in the middle. He wanted to explain to his Xixiang and Shiji, but he did not know what to say. He turned to Bailu. When he saw the Falcon girl's watery eyes, his heart was excited. His chest tightened. Then he spat out a mouthful of blood. "Ah!" Hede and Bailu screamed at the same time. Shah Danan actually did not have any big problem. He was hit by the combined force of 4 people in midair. Although he had the incantation to protect him and the fire stick blocked most of the power, but Xavion and others' cultivation was higher than Shah Danan. Although they realized something was wrong and held back some of their power, but the strong force still smashed him down. Luckily, it was the sea below. The impact was not big. If it was hard ground, it would be hard for Shah Danan to bear. Shah Danan's chest was already depressed, and this embarrassing scene caused his blood to boil. He spat out a mouthful of blood, but it was congested blood. Although exaggerated, it was not a big problem. But Tian Linger and the rest did not know. She and this little junior brother were very close since young. Under her concern, she immediately ran over. Unexpectedly, she had just moved and saw that the evil faction young lady opposite, with an anxious face, also ran over. Hede was a girl after all. Her mind was very sensitive. She stopped in surprise. But Xavion and Amandla thought this Falcon heretic wanted to take advantage of Xiao Shidi's injury. With a loud shout, Xavion's 10 tigers soared enlarged in the wind and chopped down at Bila's head. Bila was worried about Sha Danan, but she was stopped by this big man. She was angry, but he came aggressively, so she should not underestimate him. With a twist of her body, she turned into a streak of green light and actually passed through the 10 tigers' light by a hair's breadth. But before she could fly 10 feet, white light flashed in front of her. A strange, square esper flew toward her. Bila could not see what it was, so she did not dare to take it head-on. She stopped her body, waved her right hand in the wind. A white flower appeared between her jade-like fingers. It was her favorite esper, heart-rend flower. Following Bailu's incantation, heart-rend flower rose into the air and stopped the strange thing. Bila looked at it. She did not feel angry and funny at the same time. It was a 6-sided square. There were some numbers engraved on it. It was a die. She could not imagine there is such deviant esper in the righteous. It was really rare. Chapter 110. The white light of Heartache Flower pushed Amandla's dice back 10 feet away. It seemed Amandla's cultivation was not as good as Bailu. Amandla's cultivation was not as good as Xavion, but he was much smarter. Once he saw his cultivation was not enough, he did not fight it head-on. He raised the other 2 dice and harassed Bailu. The 3 dice flew like lightning, hitting one up and one down, turning and turning, taking care of the left and right. Although they could not enter the range of the heart-rending flower, Bai Yao could not rush over either. She only delayed for a moment. Xavion, who was behind her, had already rushed over. Bila had just fought with Xavion. She knew this person's cultivation was very high. If she fought him alone, she may not be able to defeat him. In addition to the sneaky guy in front of her, there was also the Ling Air Shiji that Sha Danan mentioned. She was not going to get any good tonight. She looked at Sha Danan from far away, cursed in her heart. Brat! Xavion was about to catch up, but saw the evil which it was fighting with Du. Baishu suddenly flew back. The flower in her hand suddenly transformed into thousands of strange flowers. For a moment covered the sky. His heart was shocked. He quickly concentrated to defend. But unexpectedly, it was just Bai Yao's camouflage. In the thousands of flowers, Bai Yao's green figure soared up to the sky, sped away. Xavion was about to chase, but Amandla and Hede called at the same time, "De Shixiang, don't chase." Xavion quickly put away his sword and ran to Sha Danan with the others. East Sea Billows Hill. The mountain on the island was grand and steep. It occupied a large area. Based on size, it could be considered number 1 among the East Sea Islands. But because the mountain was far away and rarely seen, its fame was far less than the other 2 famous mountains of East Sea, Mount Punglai and Yama's Island. But at this moment, Billows Hill was the most crowded since ancient times. For several days, the Falcons seemed to be searching for something in the mountain. Even though the mountain was vast, cultivators were traveling on their swords, and their speed was extremely fast. It was common for them to bump into each other. Both sides had a deep hatred. Often when they saw each other clearly, they would use their magical weapons to smash over, one after another. The sound was earth-shattering. Their fellow Taoists would also rush over to help, thus forming a gang fight stance. Countless dazzling or sinister and vicious magical weapons flew here and there in the sky above Lubo Hill. For several days in a row, the 2 factions each suffered more than 10 casualties, and the small hills and hills on Lubo Hill were innocently flattened and smashed into countless pieces. Since that night, when he met up with Hede and the others, under their lead, Sha Danan finally found the location of Billows Hill and also saw his master Tian Belize and Shern Yongsuren. It turned out that this time the evil cult was rising with ferocious momentum. Not only some of the old demons who had been hiding for many years came out again, there were also numerous new faces, and most of their skills were not low. It could be seen that for the past few years the evil cult had been hiding their strength and biding their time. The enemy was strong. The righteous did not dare to be careless. Qing Yun's sect head, Reverend Daoxian, After discussing with Tian'in Temple, Funxiang Valley sent out the elite disciples of the 7 branches, Dragon Head Valley, Rising Sun Valley, Big Bamboo Valley, Small Bamboo Valley for branches, with Dragon Head Valley head Taoist Vaskalo and Big Bamboo Valley head Tian Bui as the leaders, supported by several elders, brought dozens of Qingyun disciples, plus Tian'in Temple, Funxiang Valley, and a few other good faction loose immortals together. Came to Lubo Hill. When Tian Bui saw Sha Danan, he was startled. Although he was happy, he could still hold it. But Shenyang Serene did not have so many concerns. She pulled Sha Danan aside with a smile and kept asking questions. Sha Danan was grateful. Looking at Shenyang, his tears were about to come out again. He forced himself to hold it back and told her what happened. But because of Bailu's identity, he hid the matter of Bailu in Blooddrop Cave. He only said he was trapped in the mountain for several days and luckily found a secret passage to escape. Everyone listened and sighed. It was really a narrow escape from death. Among the Bamboo Peak disciples, Xavion, Hidaji, Amanla, and Hidi came. From them, Sha Danan learned that among the 8 people in the Cave of Fangs, Skysong's Fezan and Fashion, Incense Valley's Li Su and Yan'an were all safe and sound. Kevern and Issa were also safe and sound. The most dangerous one was Anan, who fell into Forsaken Abyss with Sha Danan. She was poisoned by Red-Eye Boar and was wounded in the battle with Nether Spirit's Tree Spirit. Then the ancient demon Abyssal Viper's Tsunami hit her unconscious and fainted in Forsaken Abyss. But relying on the protective blue light of Tianya, Celestial Sword, Kaheo, and the rest who took the risk to dive into Forsaken Abyss to save her, actually found Anan, who was surrounded by countless Nether Spirits, and then snatched her back from Yin Luo Dian. At that time, Anan just woke up and told them Sha Danan was still alive and also in Forsaken Abyss. But they searched for several days and still had no clue. Anan was still poisoned, heavily wounded, but for some reason, she was still determined to find Sha Danan. After a few days, she could not hold on any longer. They could only ignore her strong objection and gave up the search. They brought Anan back to Mount Jadian. This time, Jadian came to East. Sha Danan's old acquaintances, except Issa, all of them came. Tian Linger giggled and said, "If Lu Senior's sister Lu knows that you are safe and sound, she will be very happy. You don't know how anxious she was when she couldn't find you in the Forsaken Abyss that day." Sha Danan startled. Anan's face appeared in his mind. He remembered she saved him many times in Forsaken Abyss. His heart was filled with gratefulness, said, "Lu Shiji is from the same faction, of course I." Halfway through, he suddenly remembered something, turned to Hidi. "Shiji, you were not there at that time. How did you know Lu Shiji was anxious?" Hidi stuck out her tongue, made a face, smiled. "I heard it from Kevern Shixiao." Sha Danan was startled. Looking at Lingair Shiji's smiling face, suddenly his heart that had been boiling since they met again became cold. The next day, the conflict between good and evil arose again. In the midst of the fight, Tian'in Temple and the other holy monks saw the trees in a mess. Wild boars, hares, wild dogs, wild snakes, and other living things in misery couldn't help but sighed and started to recite the Rebirth Mercy mantra. After he finished chanting, he said, "Umitba Buddha," and waved his finger. A magical weapon struck out with earth-shattering power. The devil cult people dodged to the side. With a rumbling sound, another small hill was destroyed. Once again, the people were plunged into misery. They had no choice but to chant the Rebirth mantra again. "Bald bastard, damn Baldy, if you have guts then shut your mouth and fight me. You keep chanting curses. Even if I am not cursed to death, I will be annoyed to death by you. Umitba, cynical benefactor, your sin is heavy. If you don't repent, you will fall into a Vici hell after death. Pa pa pa. Bald bastard, are you still a monk? You dare to curse me." Sha Danan found the voice very familiar. He looked at it. It was the strange-looking cynical dialectian in Cave of Fangs at Kongsang Mountain. Right now, he was standing in front of the evil faction camp, his face full of anger, saliva flying as he pointed and scolded a good faction Tian'in Temple monk and Yin leader, Lin Feng Lu Gao, and that beautiful young woman, Right now, we're also standing among the evil faction people. Shah Danan was surprised they also came here. Suddenly, someone behind him chanted the name of Buddha, said, Amitba, Zhang Shidi hello. Shah Danan turned around and saw familiar people. It was Fezan and Fashion from Skysong Temple. Among the 8 people from Cave of Fangs, the 2 monks from Skysong Temple had a good relationship with him. Especially this Fezan, he looked at him differently. From Hidi, he also knew it was this Fezan who made the decision to leave Forsaken Abyss despite Ainan's objection. But the pain on his face could not be faked. Shah Danan was grateful to them. Now he saw Fezan in Fashion. He quickly saluted, Hello, Shixiangs. Fezan looked at him carefully, let out a long sigh, smiled. The ancient said, Heaven will protect the good, now I believe it. Zhang Shidi escaped from death. Congratulations. There will be good fortune in the future. The tall Fashion stood behind the Shixiang, who was a head shorter than him. Also said, Zhang Shidi's good fortune. Shah Danan was grateful, said, Thank you, Shixiangs, for your concern. Fezan smiled and nodded, then looked at the field. Cynical Dialectian was already fighting with the Skysong Temple monk. He patted his shoulder, said, We will talk when we have time. Shah Danan quickly answered, Yes. Fezan took 2 steps, then turned back, smiled at Shah Danan. Zhang Shidi, you should go visit your faction's Anan benefactor Lu when you have time. She's very worried about you. Then his face turned mysterious, smiled at Fashion, then left together. Shah Danan, startled, couldn't help but looked at the Jadian Bamboo Height. This time the head of Bamboo Height, Master Shui, was not here. All the female disciples were led by the Shujibako. Listen to Master Vas Kalo and Tian Belize. Anan was standing in the middle of them. Not seen for a month, Anan looked thinner. Not sure if it was because of the wounds. But looking at her from here, Shah Danan was still amazed. He felt this girl was born beautiful, a peerless face. Even though she was thinner, she was still like a drop of dew in a blooming lily, lonely and proud, added to her beauty. The female disciples of Small Bamboo Valley were mostly beautiful girls, attracted numerous gazes, other than those old monks from Tian'in Temple who did not look sideways. Qing Yun sect and Funxiang Valley male disciples all intentionally or unintentionally looked over. Lu Sueki even attracted the most gazes. But at this moment, she returned to her cold arrogance. When her eyes glanced at Shah Danan, it only paused for a moment, then moved away without any other expression. Shah Danan was a little disappointed, but after a while, he was a little happy. Originally, he was already somewhat afraid of this icy beauty, but now that he saw that she was ignoring him, he was instead relieved. Not long after, his attention was attracted by Hidi's giggling, and he could no longer turn around. Chapter 111. The person fighting against Cynical Dialectian was a Skysong monk. His cultivation was profound. He used a shining golden wooden fish esper. It was like it was alive, chasing after Cynical Dialectian. Cynical Dialectian was in a very difficult situation. The strange Fong esper in his hand was gray and no longer glowing. It was probably broken by the opponent. The sound of the wooden fish rose. The golden wooden fish shook its head and tail in the air, chasing behind Cynical Dialectian. Cynical Dialectian was panting heavily, running awkwardly, looking very funny. The good faction people burst out laughing. Tianlinger was even more like a young girl, giggling nonstop. Shah Danan stood next to her, peeked at his Shiji. Hidi's smile was like flour. 2 shallow dimples appeared on her snow-like face. It was as moving could be. His heart was intoxicated. He only hoped this moment would be forever. Suddenly, he heard a whistle. Shah Danan looked. It was Nian Boss who came out from the crowd and helped. His cultivation was far above Cynical. The power of Red Devil I was not small. The Skysong monk took back his smile and carefully dealt with him. Shah Danan took a few glances and found a strange thing. In the evil faction, when Wild Dog Taoist was trapped, other than Yin leader, Lu Gao, and the rest who had an ugly expression, the rest of them were actually enjoying the show, gloating over the calamity. Later on, when they saw that Wild Dog Taoist could not hold on any longer, only Nian leader stepped out to rescue him. The rest of them just stood by and watched. Shah Danan was puzzled. He thought the falcon could not be judged with common sense. Could it be that they have some kind of internal strife? Shah Danan's guess was pretty much the same. Nian leader, Wild Dog, and the rest all belonged to the evil faction Bloodforger Hall branch. This branch was naturally incomparably glorious under Elder Blackheart's hands 800 years ago. Their reputation spread far and wide, but now they had been declining for a long time and had long been ostracized by the mainstream evil faction branch. Now that they saw a Wild Dog making a fool of himself, the evil faction people who had the advantage in numbers not only did not help, instead they were giggling at the side watching the joke. Nian leader was after all the head of a sect. His skills were not shallow. In just a few rounds he was able to withstand the attacks of the Tian Temple monks. Wild Dog Taoist found a gap and caught his breath, scolded loudly. "Bald donkey, you almost harmed your Taoist grandfather." While scolding, he turned around and pounced, together with Nian leader, 2 against 1. The good faction people were in an uproar. One after another someone cursed. The evil faction's sorcerer, shameless to the extreme. In the midst of the condemnation, Shah Danan suddenly felt the wind beside him. He was surprised. It was Tian Linger who was unwilling to be left out. Dashed out, the amber vermilion silk glowed, clustered around her graceful figure, soared into the air. Shameless demon, fighting with numbers, great master Fa Zhong, I will help you. Hidi shouted. Shah Danan learned the monk was called Fa Zhong. The name seemed to be the same generation as Fazan and Fashion, but his appearance was much older than them. Fa Zhong saw Tian Linger, jumped out, chanted a Buddha's name, said, "Thank you, benefactor." Fa Zhong waved his right hand. The golden wooden fish in the air immediately rushed to Nian leader, entangled him, took him to the side. Hidi then handed him to cynical Dialectian. A discerning person could see that Fa Zhong saw Hidi was young, so he left cynical, who was obviously weak, to her. Shah Danan saw Hidi and cynical were fighting. His heart was anxious. He was about to go out and help. Suddenly his shoulder was pulled by someone. It was the Shixiang Xavion. Xavion's face became serious, whispered, "Shao Shitty, Falcon Sorcerer is shameless. They want to win with numbers, but we disdain to do that." Shah Danan immediately realized, nodded, and stopped his momentum. Inadvertently, he saw Tian Beli's couple. They were both calm. Then he thought, Master and Shenyang are here. How could Ling-Er Shiji be in trouble? He really worried for nothing. Shah Danan's face blushed, looked around. Everyone seemed to be looking at the field. No one noticed his loss of composure. Xavion also turned his head to look at the battle in mid-air. Then he was relieved. And at this moment, he suddenly felt a gaze landed on him from the side. Just that when he turned to look, it was the small bamboo Valley Senior sisters. Lu Sweki was also among them, but no one was looking over here. At this time, in mid-air, Hidi was using the amber vermilion soul as she pleased. In the thousands of rays of light, cynical Dialection's head was dizzy. He could only feel there were Phoenix soul all around him, trapping him in the middle, unable to get out, unable to break. After a while, he will be wrapped by the Phoenix soul like a dumpling. Tian Bui saw his daughter showed her face. His face could not help but show a proud expression. The good faction people also praised. Tian Linger was already beautiful. Compared to Wild Dog Taoist, that dog-like appearance, she was worlds apart. Later, not only the righteous people applauded, even the Falcon people laughed out loud. Cynical heard it and became angry from embarrassment. Although his cultivation was not high, his experience in fighting enemies was far from Tian Linger. This inexperienced young lady, with a turn of his eyes, he took a few glances at Tian Linger and could tell that this young lady was most likely a newcomer. He immediately shouted, "Stinky girl, you look rather delicate and pretty. Didn't expect that you actually have an illicit affair with this old monk." Everyone at the scene suddenly quietened down. A moment later, the good faction scolded loudly. The evil faction laughed. There were even some obscene people who laughed loudly and said, that's right. I really couldn't tell." Hidi was angry and anxious, said angrily, "You, what nonsense are you talking about?" Cynical Dialectian pointed, his dog face, awe-inspiring righteousness, with an expression of enforcing justice on behalf of heaven, said, "Hey, if you are not intimate with this old monk, why would you jump out to help him?" After saying that, even Fa Zhong's countenance changed. He repeatedly chanted Amitabha Buddha. Tianlinger was even more furious. She actually knew that this was Wild Dog's provocation, but she, an 18-year-old young lady, was suddenly crowned with this huge humiliation in public. How could she not be angry? Immediately, she revealed a flaw in her magical weapon. Cynical Dialectian saw the opportunity, hurriedly dashed out of the amber vermilion silk's encirclement. Only then did his figure scuttle out. A rumbling sound was heard. The sky full of red silk slammed down. If this person was in the middle, wouldn't he be crushed into pieces? Cynical Dialectian could not help but stick out his long tongue, said, "Such a ruthless girl." Jade was extremely annoyed. Her originally snow-white face flushed red. Without a word, the amber vermilion silk rose up against the wind, like lightning, once again charged towards Cynical Dialectian. Cynical Dialectian was frightened, hugged his head, and ran. The evil faction people saw him running back, hissed, suddenly not knowing who was the first to lead. In the sound of who one by one actually flew away, no one helped. In a blink of an eye, the evil faction people were only left with the Bloodforger Hall people. Nian leader watched from there, his face gloomy, his heart filled with hatred. But after all, he knew that this was not a place to stay for long. Immediately, Red Devil, I shot out red light continuously, forcing Fa Zhong to retreat several zhongs. He pulled himself up, using his hand to beckon the crowd. Also escaped. Jade wanted to continue chasing, only to hear her father Tian Bai's clear voice from behind. "Jade, don't chase anymore." Jade abruptly stopped, her face still flushed, turned and said to Tian Bui, "Dad, don't listen to that evil person's nonsense." Tian Bui smiled. Suru instead walked up, pulled her down, smiled, and said, "Those evil faction evil people, they could do all kinds of evil things, not to mention those vulgar words. We can only pretend we did not hear it." At this time, the good faction people mostly echoed. One after another said, "Exactly, exactly. Miss Tian, do not need to take it to heart." Jade then resentfully came down. The good faction people saw that the evil faction evil people had left. Most of them also left. These days, they often fought with the evil faction people like this, fight and disperse, and then fight again. Sha Danan was about to go up and talk to Jade Shiji, but suddenly his shoulder was hit by someone. He turned around and was startled. Then his face lit up with joy. Lin Jingyu was standing behind him, his face full of joy. He had not seen him for a long time. He was dressed in white, with a dragon-slaying sword on his back. His eyebrows were like swords, and his eyes were like stars. He was handsome and elegant. He really was outstanding. Speaking of which, this is the first time Sha Danan saw this childhood playmate since the Seven Peaks tournament. These days, when he was wandering in Jianghu, every time he was in a life-and-death situation, Bei's figure always flashed across his mind. Bei looked at Sha Danan for a while. His face was filled with joy and excitement. Suddenly, he rushed forward and hugged Sha Danan in his arms, refusing to let go. Only after a long time did he let go. Sha Danan was also excited. He also saw that there seemed to be some tears in Bei's eyes. "Xiao Fan." Bei opened his mouth, choked with sobs. The hand holding Sha Danan's shoulder tightened, almost making Sha Danan feel pain. But Sha Danan did not care at all. After seeing Bei, it was like the fear and despair he experienced these days at the edge of life and death. Only this brother can understand. Only in front of this brother, he can really relax himself. Lin Jingyu grabbed him tightly, whispered, "Xiao Fan, I thought I would never see you again." Speaking to this point, he was too emotional. His lips trembled slightly. He could not continue. Me too." Sha Danan also looked at him. Not long after, the two suddenly looked at each other and smiled, let out a long breath. "It's good that you are back. We still need to wipe out the evil faction together, revenge together." Bei grabbed Sha Danan's shoulder, smiled, and said, "Yes." Sha Danan nodded heavily. Bei's mood slowly stabilized. His face also calmed a lot. Looking at Sha Danan's face, suddenly there was a trace of sadness between his eyebrows, said, "After I heard that you left the mountain, I was happy for you, but also hated myself. I can't believe that all these years I have wasted Master's hope on me. My achievement is not as good as yours." Sha Danon was surprised, shook his head. You can't say that. Who doesn't know that your talent is 10 times better than mine? If I met you in the last tournament, I will definitely lose. I was just a little bit lucky. Bei let out a breath, laughed, said, That's right. In the future, I will practice harder. I don't believe I can't beat you, but you also can't relax. Sha Danon laughed, nodded hard. They were reminiscing. Hede was still pouting and acting like a spoiled child to her mother. Serene was smiling and comforting her. Sha Danon and Bei talked for a while, looked at the masters, grabbed Bei's hand, said, Come, let me introduce you to my master and Xixiao. Unexpectedly, Lin Jingyu snorted and said in a low voice, Just that short winter melon master of yours. Forget it. Sha Danon glared at him, said, Don't talk nonsense. Then he pulled him close. Bei had no choice but to follow him. Sha Danon was about to say something, but suddenly he saw a person appeared at the place where Hede and Shenyang Serene were talking. It was Kevern. Kevern gently said a few words to Tianling Air. Tianling Air immediately laughed. There was not a trace of anger left. Her smile was like a flower. In front of everyone, she grabbed Kevern's hand and walked toward Tian Belize. Sha Danon felt a buzz in his head, then his mind went blank. There was no image left, only Shiji holding Kevern's hand, walking toward him. He could faintly hear Bei smile, whispered, Originally, your short winter melon master was determined not to let Kevern Xixiang and Tian Shiji be together. But Qi Xixiang went to beg Master. Master always valued Qi Xixiang. Also went ahead of Mortal to say something. Your master had to agree. Haha, you see, now they've already made it public. Bei suddenly stopped talking, slightly opened his mouth, looking at Sha Danon. At this moment, Sha Danon was like a different person. He felt a fire of anger rose in his heart, almost burning his body. He felt as if he was being roasted alive in the 9 nether evil flames. In front of him, the man and the beautiful woman he loved the most were holding hands as they walked over. Chapter 112. The fire stick that was hidden at his waist. At this moment, a familiar cold feeling rose up, spread all over his body. But it not only did not cool down the fire, it was like adding oil to the fire. A murderous air, a trace of bloodthirsty heat, just like that, twisted Sha Danon's face. In this scene, everyone was startled. The harmonious atmosphere froze in an instant. And then the crowd saw the always gentle little junior brother suddenly emitted a murderous aura that even those evil faction people did not have. The people around him involuntarily took a step back, watching this person who suddenly turned ferocious, murderous aura towards Kaheo and also towards Tianlinger took a step forward. The blue sky above Billows Hill seemed to darken. Xavion stood in front of Sha Danon. He immediately felt this Xiao Shidi who he watched grow up. There was not even a trace of familiarity. Feeling someone was blocking in front of him, Sha Danon slowly raised his head, stared at Xavion. Xavion saw his bloodshot eyes and felt a chill in his heart. He forced a smile, said, Xiao Fan, what happened to you? Sha Danon did not answer, only said in a low, hoarse voice, Get out of my way. His intonation was dragged out very long and very low, as if he had used a lot of strength to say it. But in the ears of the crowd, there was a sense of horror. Tian Bai's face immediately darkened. Everyone was also stunned. Then, under everyone's gaze, Sha Danon saw Xavion was still blocking in front of him. His right hand held the fire stick tightly. Immediately, a cold, dark green light came out from the stick, bringing with it a murderous intent that had never been seen before. Xavion was really frightened. It was not because of the strong, murderous intent, nor was it because Sha Danon's cultivation had improved greatly after he left the mountain for a month. It was because this Xiao Shidi who respected and loved him since he was young now really wanted to kill him. He could see it. Tian Belize could also see it. He took a step forward with a gloomy face. Although he still thought Sha Danon was not Xavion's opponent, his disciple's Esper was very strange. That day at Seven Peaks tournament, Xavion would not be easy to deal with. At this moment, Hede ran out with a surprised face and stood in front of Sha Danon and Xavion. Facing her favorite Xiao Shidi, she asked, Xiao Fan, What happened to you? That face that was engraved in his heart, that pair of bright eyes, this woman that he yearned for day and night, was standing in front of him, asking with concern, and concern. Shah Danon was stunned, like waking up from a dream. The hostility in his body retreated like tide, but he still felt a tearing pain. He stared at his Shiji in front of him. There was a feeling of wanting to cry. Do you know that at that critical moment of life and death, the person I missed the most was you? Do you know that when I dream of returning to Qin Yun, thousands of lingering emotions, they are all for you? Do you know that? Pa! A heavy and crisp sound. Shah Danon's face was slapped by Tian Belize, who suddenly appeared next to him. Shah Danon's body flew out uncontrollably, drew an arc in midair, and landed far away from the battlefield. Everyone was stirred. Shah Danon fell on the ground, seeing stars. But when he came back to himself, he felt extremely ashamed. How could he want to attack the Shi Xiang, who had been taking care of him since he was young, and even had the intention to kill him? It was unforgivable. He struggled to get up, but before he could straighten his body, his feet softened, and he fell down again. Half of his face was swollen, and blood came out from the corner of his mouth. However, at this moment, he seemed to be unable to feel the pain in his body. There was only fear in his heart that he had never felt before. He roared at himself. What's wrong? What's wrong with you? Are you crazy? He raised his head in a daze, looking at the people of his sect in front of him, as if all of them, at this moment, became a stranger. And their eyes, looking at him, were like looking at a stranger they had never met before. All of this, what is going on? Shah Danon struggled to stand up. No one said anything. Everyone was looking at him, but their expression was more confused than afraid, as if he did not know what was going on. Xavion, after all, loved Shah Danon from the bottom of his heart. He turned to Tian Belize and said, Master, Xiao Shidi, he did not mean to be disrespectful. He is just... Shut up, Tian Belize shouted. Xavion did not dare to continue. The short and fat Tian Belize at this moment looked like a towering angry god, walking toward Shah Danon step by step. Shah Danon's face showed a trace of fear. This, after all, is the master he was most afraid of since he was young. He could not even imagine what he will face next. Suddenly, a white figure blocked in front of Shah Danon. Everyone was surprised. Bei's face was like frost, his eyebrows frowned, but facing the famous head of Bamboo Peak of Jadian, he was still the same as when he was young, without any fear. His clothes were as white as snow. Standing there, like a nail nailed to the ground, did not move an inch. Even if there was a raging wave in front of him, it could not move him at all. Clang! In the dragon's roar, the dragon slayer's sword was unsheathed. The green light covered him and Shah Danon, the two people with the same background. With a stern aura, he did not even look at his respected Shi Xiang Kevern, who was constantly signaling him with his eyes. He said decisively, If you dare to touch Xiao Fan again, you will have to kill me first. Kevern gasped and stole a glance at Tian Belize. Tian Belize's face was as ugly as it could be, almost the color of a pig's liver. How angry he was, he did not want to know. But Kevern, as the eldest disciple of Dragonhead Peak, there is no reason for him to avoid it. Also, Bei has always been favored by his master, Master Vasp Kalo. No matter what, he cannot ignore it. Kevern looked at Tian Belize's expression and knew it was useless to persuade him. He could only quickly ran over, pulled Bei, whispered, You are crazy shitty. This is Bamboo Peak's internal affairs. Why are you poking your nose into other people's business? Even if the master is here, it is not good to say anything. Come with me. But today, Bei was different than usual. He snorted, If I leave, I don't know how Xiao Fan will be tortured by this person. He has a lonely life, just like me. If I do not stand on his side, no one in the world will stand on his side. While speaking, his eyes were like lightning, looking at Bamboo Peak. Although he knew the difference in strength was too big, but looking at his expression for the brother behind him, he could not care less about his life. Kevern was speechless. Seeing Lin Shidi's stubborn temper, he was really anxious. In the midst of his anxiety, a hand suddenly touched Lin Jingyu's shoulder. Bei was surprised. He turned around and saw Shah Danon standing behind him. Half of his face was swollen, but his eyes were filled with tears. His voice was choked with sobs. Bei, I appreciate your kindness. Now it is my fault. I will apologize to my master. You go back with Qi Shixiang first. Bei frowned and was about to speak, but Kevern hurriedly said in his ear, Lin Shitty, if you stay here, I'm afraid you will make Tian Shirshu more and more angry and harm Zhang Shitty. Go quickly. Then he forcefully pulled Bei away. Bei was struggling, but seeing Sha Danan's pleading eyes, he hesitated. After a long time, he was finally pulled away by Kevern. When he was leaving, he kept looking back at Sha Danan. Tian Beli's face was very ugly. Bamboo Peak disciples looked at each other. No one dared to say a word. Sha Danan quietly walked to him, knelt down, put his head on the ground, motionless. Tian Beli's laughed coldly. I don't deserve it. Who is this? His cultivation is so high. His murderous spirit is so strong. Do you still see me as your master? Sha Danan's body shook, heavily kowtowed 3 times, did not lift his head, still on the ground. Xavion and others always loved this Xiao Shitty. Seeing him like this, they had already forgotten Sha Danan's strange look. They all said to Tian Belice, Master, Xiao Shitty he dashed. Tian Belice waved his hand. Everyone's words were stuck in their throat. Tian Belice looked at Sha Danan, snorted angrily, said coldly, Can't believe I have taught a disobedient disciple all these years. Then he turned and walked away without looking back. He did not care about Sha Danan anymore. Serene sighed and followed. Everyone helplessly followed. Only Sha Danan was left, kneeling on the ground alone. His head still did not lift. The sky was dark. The righteous went to the south side of Billows Hill to rest. There were dozens of natural caves here, very convenient. That day when he came to the hill, he was noticed by the righteous. Qing Yun sect occupied 4 caves according to the difference of the 4 branches. Bamboo Peak had the least number of people. It was the cave at the west. Next to it was the forest. On the other side were Dragon Head Peak, Rising Sun Peak, Bamboo Height. Further past the caves were the residences of Tianyin Temple, Funxiang Valley, and other good faction people. This time when Sha Danan came back, Skysong Temple's Fezan and Fashion had already met him. Kevern also came to greet him. Anan stood among the Bamboo Height people and did not come. Li Su and Yanan from Incense Valley also did not come, but he did not have the mind to think about those things. He followed the others back. He did not dare to enter the cave. He had been kneeling on the rock outside the cave. From afternoon to now dark, he had been kneeling for more than 8 hours. Tian Belice did not show any mercy. Many Jadian disciples, Skysong Temple, Incense Valley people came out and saw him. They gathered in a circle, pointing at him from afar. Laughter could be faintly heard. Sha Danan was ashamed, but he did not dare to get up. But after kneeling for so long, his knees were very sore. Suddenly, from the cave next to him, where the Dragon Head Peak disciples lived, came a noise. Sha Danan did not raise his head, but he could vaguely hear Bei shouting angrily. It seemed like he could not hold it any longer and was about to rush over, but was held back by Kevern and other disciples. While the noise was still, a powerful voice came from the cave next door. Jingyu, come in. I have something to say to you. Sha Danan knew it was the voice of head of Dragon Head Peak Vasp Kalo Shirshu. The Dragon Head Peak disciples quieted down. It showed Master Vasp Kalo's authority. After a while, Bei did not dare to disobey his master's order. He entered the cave and did not come out again. The night returned to peace. The people who were watching the scene gradually dispersed. Only Sha Danan was still kneeling at the entrance of the cave. At this moment, Xavion, Hidaji, Amanla, and others begged Tian Belice. But after Tian Belice angrily scolded them, they did not dare to say anything. But after a moment of silence, Hidi's excited voice came. Dad, what are you doing? Xiao Fan has been kneeling outside for almost 10 hours. What did he do wrong? Did he hurt the Shi Xiang or killed him? He already admitted his mistake. You still won't let him come in? Boom! A loud sound, rocks flew. Tian Belice's anger could not be quelled. His palm hit the hard rocks, smashing them into pieces. Hidi seemed to want to say something. Serene whispered a few words to her, and pulled her away. Then there was no more sound. Chapter 113. In the dark night, the moon and stars could not be seen. There was not a trace of light in the night sky. Shah Danan had been kneeling at the entrance of a cave for almost 12 hours. The disciples of the other sects had mostly fallen asleep. Even the last light, the fire in the Big Bamboo Valley cave, unwillingly, gradually extinguished. In the cave, Tian Bui seemed to have said something. Tian Linger almost immediately shouted out, "Father!" No sound, no follow-up. Shah Danan did not know what happened. But soon, Xavion came out. Shah Danan raised his head, looked at the Shixiang. Xavion's face showed that he could not bear it, but he still said, "Shao Shitty, Master said you kneeling here annoys him. He told you to kneel further away." Shah Danan's heart sank, but his face suddenly felt cold. In this dark night, it began to rain. He did not say a word, quietly got up, walked to the edge of the forest, under the ancient tree, kneeled down. Xavion looked at him for a while. Shao Shitty's figure gradually became blurred in the rain. He sighed, shook his head, and walked back. Rumble! A loud rumble of thunder resounded from the horizon. White lightning streaked across the blue dome of heaven, as if the pitch-black night sky had been split into several pieces. A moment later, bean-sized raindrops smashed down like pebbles, hitting the rocks with a pitter-patter. After a while, heavy rain poured down. In a blink of an eye, the world became misty. Shah Danan's body was completely soaked. His clothes clung tightly to his body, unspeakably cold. He raised his head and looked forward. The originally dark night, with the heavy rain, he could not see the scene in the cave. In the world, it was like he was the only one left here, suffering. He lowered his head, motionless. This heavy rain, it was like the heaven was also punishing him. It continued to fall. The rain did not stop. Lightning and thunder roared wildly on his body. The rain fell from his wet hair, slid down his face. Shah Danan could hardly open his eyes. But at this moment, when there was no one around, he suddenly saw, in front of him, a figure appeared. A pair of feet stepped in front of him. He raised his head with difficulty. Lightning flashed in the sky and thunder rumbled. With the help of that faint light, he saw a poignant beauty standing in front of him. Shah Danan was stunned. Lu Sweki was also drenched. Lightning flashed, and her figure became a hazy shadow in the darkness. But Shah Danan could clearly feel that she was in front of him. In the stormy night, such a gentle figure gently squatted down in front of him. The rain became heavier, and the wind became fiercer. In the deep of the forest, it was like there was a demon howling. A cold hand, slightly trembling, stroked Shah Danan's hair. A voice like sleep talking, in this stormy night, whispered, "Don't be afraid. It will be over soon. I will be here with you." Boom! The thunder seemed to split the night sky, shattered the soul. In the place where lightning flashed, in the howling wind and rain, when the cold rain was dancing like demon, that gentle face, that pair of gentle eyes, like the sweetest figure in a dream, was beside him. In the storm, she whispered to herself, facing Shah Danan, also like speaking to her own heart, softly, softly, "You saved me, protected me, did not care about your own life. I will do the same to you. The pain in your heart, heaven knows and I know. I cannot share your pain, so I will share it with you. I hope one day you can be with your lover, happily together." The voice became softer and softer, faded away. The storm became fiercer. That figure was so weak, like a wounded grass in the wind, wavering. Shah Danan was in a trance, like he was in a dream. The night was dark, the sky was silent. After the storm raged for a long time, it began to subside. Shah Danan's body was cold. The cold invaded his body. His hands and feet were already cold. He knew if this continues, he will be seriously ill. But no matter what, he did not want to get up and hide from the rain. In this cold, a faint warmth came from his right arm, slowly circulated in his body, neutralized a lot of the cold. It seemed to come from the Esper Inferno mirror on his right arm. Shah Danan suddenly remembered the ghost-like woman. He thought it was Anan, but now he could not see where she was. He did not know if she left or never appeared. Thinking of that, he smiled bitterly, shook his head, water splashed everywhere. But at that moment, he clearly heard a voice. "Silly boy." Shah Danon, startled, quickly turned around, almost called out Lu Shiji. But a woman slowly walked out from the deep of the forest. Her hand was holding an umbrella to block the rain. She was smiling at him. It was the person he never expected to see here, the Falcon Girl Bailu. In the night, although the rain was lighter than before, it was still quite heavy. He could not see it clearly from far. Shah Danon thought his eyes were blurred. But when he looked closely, it was really Bailu. She was walking toward him with a smile on her face. She was still dressed in green, and she was still holding a green oilcloth umbrella in her hand. But the storm was too heavy. The edge of her light dress was wet in several places. As he walked closer, he could see it more clearly. The places that were soaked in water were sticking softly to his skin, faintly discernible. Shah Danon suddenly lowered his head, did not look at her. Bai Yao, startled, squatted down in front of him, looked at him from head to toe, chuckled, and said, "You are really weird. In such heavy rain, you have to kneel here. Is this also the cultivation method of your Jadian?" Shah Danon glared at her, but he saw Bailu's face was unexpectedly gentle like water in the night. He was startled. Boom! The thunder came from the dark clouds in the sky. Almost at that moment, a huge lightning flashed across the sky, split the night sky in half. After a flash, it faded away. As the lightning flashed and thunder roared, the rain that filled the sky actually became heavier again. Bailu frowned, leaned closer to him. Shah Danon suddenly found that the painful raindrops suddenly lessened. His whole body was like being released from the heavy pressure, became relaxed. He lifted his head. It was Bailu who moved the umbrella to him and blocked the rain for him. But the rain was so heavy, Bailu could take care of Shah Danon, but she missed something. Half of her body was wet in a blink of an eye. Shah Danon's heart warmed. He pushed the umbrella to her, whispered, "You just got seriously sick in Blood Drop Cave. Be careful not to catch a cold." Bailu, startled, looked at Shah Danon. Shah Danon was puzzled by her look, asked, "What is it?" Bailu smiled. Her face was filled with joy, said, "So you brats still know how to care about my body?" Shah Danon blushed, but luckily it was hard to see in this stormy night. He said embarrassedly, "I am afraid when you get sick, you will blame it on me." Bailu leaned next to him and squatted next to him. The difference was Shah Danon was kneeling on the ground, while Bailu was squatting next to him. At the same time, Bailu's umbrella moved again, shielded them from the wind and rain. Shah Danon felt there was a faint fragrance coming to him in the wind and rain. He couldn't help but look to the side. Bailu was also looking at him. Their eyes met. They were startled. After a while, Shah Danon moved his eyes away first. But for some reason, his heart began to beat violently. Bailu, who was always good at talking, also quieted down, quietly squatted next to Shah Danon, accompanying him. But when he was not paying attention, she quietly moved the umbrella closer to Shah Danon, shielded him from more wind and rain. Shah Danon, who was in silence, suddenly remembered something, couldn't help but cried out. He turned back to Bailu. His face was anxious, said urgently, "You, how can you come here?" Chapter 114. Bailu was not surprised by his reaction. She smiled faintly. Her voice was faint in the sound of wind and rain, a little sad. "I am here to see you." Shah Danon lowered his voice, but the anxiety in his voice was clear, said, "Everyone here is from the righteous, not to mention the elders from Skysong Temple and Incense Valley. Any elder from Jadian will be able to kill you without a burial place. Why are you still not leaving?" Bailu was unmoved. She only smiled at Shah Danon's anxious face, suddenly sighed. "You brat, at least you have some conscience." Shah Danon was speechless, unable to say anything. Bailu whispered, "Don't you consider yourself as a righteous person? Don't you think good and evil cannot coexist? Why don't you call people to catch me?" Shah Danon was anxious, but after he heard what she said, it was like he was enlightened. His heart was shocked. Cold sweat broke out all over his body. Although in the eyes of outsiders, he was not like Lin Jingyu and senior sister Tian Linger, who had exceptional aptitude and was extremely intelligent. But after all, he was not an idiot. It was just that these few years in Big Bamboo Valley, no one took him seriously, which made him feel inferior. Hearing Bailu's angry and happy words, Shah Danan immediately realized his current situation was very wrong. Not to mention the fact that he was punished by his Shifu. Even if he was discovered by his fellow disciples, he was actually intimate with this evil cult girl. He was afraid that even if his whole body was covered with mouths, he would not be able to distinguish clearly. Thinking of the consequence, Shah Danan's head buzzed. He did not dare to continue to think about it. Her mind was in a mess. Just when she was about to call out, she glanced and saw Bailu's shoulder was leaning next to her. The wind and rain were heavy, but she had covered most of her head with the umbrella. Half of her body was already soaked. Her clothes clung tightly to her skin and were reflected in his eyes. Even on her snow-white face, there were a few drops of rain, condensed into beads and slowly slid down. Shah Danan could not call out no matter how hard he tried. Why are you doing this?" Shah Danan lowered his head, said softly, "I also guess your father must be an important person. You must be a pampered young lady. Why do you need to come here and suffer for a little Jadian disciple like me?" The wind and rain were howling, and the world was austere. In the boundless night rain, it was as if this was the only place left in the entire world, with only the two of them. Bailu seemed to feel a little cold. She leaned closer to Shah Danan. This action was intimate and familiar, just like that day in Blooddrop Cave, when they were at the moment of life and death. At this moment, her voice was a little erratic. "No, I didn't suffer. You don't know, the real bitterness in this world is in the heart." Her voice gradually lowered. The rest of the words could not be heard. Shah Danan suddenly realized. She quietly put her head on his shoulder. The sound of wind, the sound of rain whistled past. Shah Danan felt his mind was blank. Only the trace of fragrance beside him truly lingered around him amidst the cold wind and rain. Early morning, the sun rose, the rain stopped, and the wind stopped. Tian Belize walked out of the cave alone. He saw his little disciple was still kneeling at the edge of the forest, motionless. He frowned and walked toward him. When he was near, Shah Danan heard the voice. He raised his head and saw it was his master, Tian Belize. His mouth moved, whispered, "Master." Tian Belize saw his clothes were soaked. Water drops were still dripping from his hair. His face was even paler. Apparently, he suffered a lot from the heavy rain last night. Thinking of this, he frowned. He heard some voices coming from the cave behind him. It must be the disciples of each faction had woken up. Tian Belize snorted, walked into the forest. When he passed by Shah Danan, he said lightly, "Follow me." Shah Danan quickly answered and was about to get up. But when he was halfway up, his feet suddenly softened and he fell down again. His feet were numb and sore. It must be caused by kneeling for a whole night. Tian Belize walked in front. His body stopped. It seemed like he hesitated for a moment. But he did not turn around and continued to walk forward. Shah Danan gritted his teeth and massaged his legs. Fortunately, he was not a spoiled person. The body that was trained when he was chopping bamboo at Bamboo Peak had a response. After a while, his blood flow became smoother and he could walk. Shah Danan stood up, looked forward, and saw Tian Belize's figure was about to disappear into the forest. He quickly ran to catch up. Not long after, when the disciples of the Orthodox sects came out of the cave, the two of them were nowhere to be seen. In the forest on Lubo Hill, there were towering ancient trees everywhere. Trees that required one person to encircle could be found everywhere. Even giant trees that required 2 or 3 people to encircle could also be seen. It must be because this place was remote and uninhabited. Shah Danan followed behind Tian Belize, walking slowly in the forest. The morning light shined through the treetop, shined on the shrubs in the forest. In this forest after the rain, it seemed that everything had been washed and everything was covered in green. Occasionally, there would be unknown flowers blooming in a lonely place, emitting a faint fragrance. Tian Belize walked in front, silent and did not say anything. He was short and fat. Shah Danan was already half a head taller than him. But in Shah Danan's eyes, that person's figure was as tall as a mountain god. Moreover, In his heart, Bailu's matter was like a small mountain pressing on him. It made his heart upset and did not know what to do. Just when Shah Danan's heart was upset, thinking if he should tell his master about Bailu, Tian Belize suddenly stopped and turned around. Shah Danan's heart jumped. He also stopped. This place was deep in the forest. There was no one around. The ancient trees were dense. Other than the faint sound of birds, there was no other sound. Tian Belize looked at him, expressionlessly said, "You stood in the rain for a whole night. Is your body okay?" Shah Danan shook his head, said quietly, "Disciple deserves it. It's okay." Tian Belize snorted. "You say it is easy, but do you hate me in your heart?" Shah Danan was surprised. His pale face became even paler. He said hurriedly, "Master, I don't have that thought. I deserve it. I will not blame Master." Tian Bui looked at the little disciple who had been neglected by him all these years, saw the anxiety on his face, the corner of his mouth moved, sighed. The expression on his face also became gentler. "Fine. Now there is no one around. Do you have anything you want to say to me?" Shah Danan's heart tightened. He thought his master already knew about Bailu. The relationship between Shah Danan and Bailu was very subtle. Last night, when Bailu came, he was afraid the elders of the factions knew about it. Could it be? While he was thinking, Tian Belize was a little impatient. Seeing Shah Danan did not say anything, he said, "I ask you, why did you suddenly treat your Shixiang like that yesterday?" Shah Danan startled, then realized his master was not referring to Bailu's matter. But then he opened his mouth, but could not speak. He could not say that he saw Tian Linger and Kaheo together and lost his mind, right? Moreover, even he himself couldn't tell what that strange murderous aura that had controlled his emotions in a moment was. Tian Belize waited for a long time. Seeing Shah Danan still could not say anything, he suddenly laughed coldly. "Is it because you saw Ling Er and Kevern's intimate action, so you are dissatisfied?" Shah Danan was shocked. A loud buzz rang in his mind. He was stunned. His secret, unrequited love for Tian Linger was one of his deepest secrets, and he had never told anyone about it. Unexpectedly at this moment, it was suddenly spoken out coldly by his most revered teacher. It was even more soul-stirring than last night's earth-shaking thunder. At that moment, he could not move. He did not even have the strength to deny. He could only look at Tian Belize, open his mouth, unable to say a word. Chapter 115. The light from the forest shined on Tian Belize and Shah Danan. Shah Danan stood in front of Tian Belize, too ashamed to show his face. After a while, he whispered, "Master." Tian Belize looked at him. His young disciple's pale face suddenly had some color. He snorted and turned away. Shah Danan didn't know what to say, but the secret in his heart was suddenly seen through by the person he respected the most. The fear still did not fade away. Tian Belize stood there with his hands behind his back, did not speak for a while. Shah Danan stood behind him with his head down, did not even dare to breathe. After a while, Tian Belize slowly said, "So, the person who secretly taught you the incantation of pure essence was Ling Er?" Shah Danan's heart jumped again, but it was related to Hidi. His mind became much clearer. He said hurriedly, "Master, that is not related to Shiji. It was me. I asked Shiji to teach me." Tian Belize turned around, stared at Shah Danan. Shah Danan's voice immediately quieted down. He knew no matter what he said, he could not hide it from his master. In the forest, the master and disciple fell into silence. Shah Danan lowered his head. His heart was in a mess. At this moment, he heard Tian Belize's voice, 7th. Shah Danan's heart jumped, raised his head, said, "Master." Tian Belize looked at him, said, "You have been my disciple for almost 5 years, right?" Shah Danan said quietly, "Yes." Tian Belize said lightly, "When I took you in, I did not think highly of your talent. The achievement you have today is really beyond my expectation." Shah Danan's body moved, but deep inside his heart, there was a little joy. Tian Belize continued, "As for your secret love with Ling Er," Shah Danan was worried, said, "Master, this is my fault. I shouldn't." Tian Belize glared at him, said, "Did I say you are wrong?" Shah Danan's mouth opened wide. This time he was really scared by Tian Belize. Tian Belize snorted. You are still young, not like those Sky Song monks. Plus you grew up with Ling Er. What is strange about liking her? Do you think your master has lived all these years in vain? You can't even think of this? Sha Danan lowered his head. Suddenly his eyes were wet. All the warm words in the world added up. In his heart, most likely could not compare to Tian Bai's cold words. Tian Belize paused, then said, But things are different now. I can see that Ling Er really likes that Kevern. As for you, I'm afraid she only sees you as a little brother, you know? Sha Danan nodded, but his eyes were staring at his feet, whispered, Yes, master. Tian Belize slowly said, The reason I opposed Ling Er and Kevern is not because of Kevern himself, but because... Then he suddenly paused, frowned, then changed the topic. To be honest, although your cultivation is faster than I expected, but compared to Kevern, you are still far behind. Tian Belize looked at Sha Danan deeply, said slowly, Do you understand what I mean? Sha Danan bit his lips tightly, said after a while, Yes, I understand, master. Tian Belize nodded, let out a long sigh, walked to him, patted his shoulder, said, Let bygones be bygones. Sha Danan felt his master's warm and broad hand patted on his shoulder. His heart warmed, nodded heavily. Tian Belize looked at him for a while, said, Then let us go back. Then he walked back the way they came. Sha Danan lifted his head, took a deep breath, then loosened his tightly clenched hands. However, that faintly discernible trace of bewilderment always lingered in his heart. He let out a bitter laugh, pulled himself together, and followed after them. When the two of them returned to the row of caves on the mountainside, the heads of the various sects were moving. Most of them had already woken up. Tian Linger and the rest were standing at the entrance of the cave, looking around anxiously, obviously very worried. Sha Danan saw it from afar. His heart was hurt. He lowered his head. Seeing Tian Belize and Sha Danan returned, Hidi ran to them. She did not say anything, but examined Sha Danan. After making sure he was not abused by Tian Belize, she whispered, Xiao Fan, where did you and my dad go so early in the morning? Sha Danan saw her face was full of concern, and her bright eyes were only looking at him. His heart was strangely hurt, but he forced a smile on his face, said, It's okay. Master took me for a walk, taught me a few things. Now he has forgiven me. Tian Belize, who was walking in front, seemed to have heard his young disciple's words, snorted, then slowly walked back. Seeing his wife Serene was standing at the cave entrance, smiling at him, his face couldn't help but stiffen. He rolled his eyes at her, did not say anything, and walked in. At this point, this small disturbance could be considered to have passed. In the following days, Sha Danan spent day and night with his Shixiangs. He grew up under the watch of his Shixiangs. Now that he returned, it was very cordial. Xavion was open-minded. He did not remember Sha Danan's rudeness that day. In addition, Serene had mentioned it to him in private, so he understood it. Instead, he loved this Xiao Shidi even more. This time, the good faction people who came to Lubo Hill were naturally led by the three big sects, Qing Yun's sect, Tianyin Temple, and Funxiang Valley, but there were also quite a number of other smaller good faction sections. Among them, there were many that Sha Danan had never heard of. They must be fighting against the Falcon for the sake of the righteous. As for among the three big sects, this time, other than Qing Yun's sect who came Taoist Song Song and Tian Bui, the other two sects did not send their elders, so imperceptibly, everything was led by Qing Yun's sect. After 3 days, Sha Danan saw several familiar people on Billows Hill. Among them were Li Su and Yanin from Incense Valley. They also came to Billows Hill on the second day. Then he saw Onara and a skinny old man standing next to him. Sha Danan went to greet him happily. Once Stone saw it was him, his expression was also very excited. After exchanging a few words, he was about to introduce his teacher, Vigorous Venerable, to him. After speaking, he turned and spoke to the elderly who was talking to F.A. Xiang. Teacher, this is the Qing Yun sect Brother Zhang that I mentioned to you. The old man turned his head. Sha Danan was surprised when he saw his face. He thought Onara's faction was called Vajra faction, and his master was called Herald of Valor, so he must be a powerful giant. Unexpectedly, The person in front of him was a skinny old man. He really couldn't come back to his senses at this moment. Stone obviously didn't think so much, and he chuckled and said, "Brother Zhang, quickly greet my master." Sha Danan realized, quickly saluted. "Elder, disciple Sha Danan, I have long heard of your name." The old man snorted, said lightly, "That's all right." After speaking, he turned back and said to that Fa Xiong, "So to say, your teacher Puhong Master is in seclusion meditating, has not come out yet?" Fa Xiong smiled and said, "Exactly. Although Master is the master of the temple, but it is always me helping Pukong Shi Shu to manage the common affairs. This time the evil faction is reviving. Pukong Shi Shu also wanted to come, but there are many things to do in the temple, so I can only come and try my best." Venerable Dali nodded and said, "With you coming, it is enough. But before I came, I thought your master Puhong and Pukong will not come, but your fourth Shi Shu Pufong hates the falcon, so he will definitely come, but why?" Seeing Herald of Valor's puzzled eyes, Fazan sighed. "Elder may not know. Since 5 years ago, third Shi Shu Puji divine monk suddenly passed away." Sha Danan's heart jumped, and at this moment, Fa Xiong's gaze, intentionally or unintentionally, glanced at him and then shifted away. Continued, "Pufong teacher uncle and Puji teacher uncle's friendship is the deepest from then on. He meditated in the temple to read the Buddhist scriptures and no longer went out." Vigor Venerable with an ah exclaimed with a great sigh. Fazan smiled, "But this is not a bad thing." Venerable Hercules chuckled and said, That's right. It's more important for all of you to focus on perfecting your own merits. Unlike an old man like me who has no fate with Buddhism and has to run around all day." Fazan smiled. "Elder must be joking. You and our Sky Song Temple are related. Master and Pukong Shi Shu had specially told you about this. Come, Elder, please take a seat inside." Herald of Valor modestly declined, then entered with him. Sha Danan watched them enter. Suddenly he felt something. He turned his head and saw it was Onara, who pulled him, whispered, "Did you see that? It seems like this young Fazan is the leader of the Sky Song monks." Sha Danan nodded. These days he had been in contact with the righteous. He saw many masters of Sky Song Temple. He also discovered that although Fa Xiong was young, but among the Fa generation Tian En Temple monks who came to Lubo Hill this time, Fa Xiong's bearing was outstanding and indistinctly had the air of a leader. Chapter 116. Most of the time, he was the one who received and talked. The older monks next to him did not say anything. It seemed like Fazan was an outstanding person that Sky Song Temple nurtured. But at this moment, he was still thinking about Fazan's look when he was talking about Puji. He did not hear what Onara was mumbling, only heard he said at the end, "I don't think he is anything special." He also said wrong. Sha Danan, startled, asked, "What did you say?" Onara looked around, said quietly, "I remember I heard someone said if a Buddhist merit is perfect and have a good end, it is called parinirvana. But he just said something like parinirvana. It makes me uncomfortable like Puji holy monk is." Brother Zhang, why your face suddenly turned so bad?" Sha Danan's mind was in a mess. He forced a smile and nodded to Onara, then returned to Jade. Onara stood there, puzzled for a long time. Sha Danan had been at Billows Hill for half a month. During this time, the righteous and Falcon were still in confrontation. During the day, they often encountered each other and fought. But what confused the righteous was the Falcon did not seem to want to fight. After several rounds of fighting, they would run away with a spear. They heard the Falcon are going to gather at this desolate place. Most likely they're going to discuss some evil plan to harm the world. So the righteous wanted to eliminate the Falcon. But now it did not seem like it. If they're the enemy of the righteous, they should come out and fight. If they heard the righteous have 2 head of Jadian, they're afraid their strength is not enough, then they should retreat. But the Falcon did not want to fight and also did not want to retreat. Billows Hill was a large place. It was an obvious target in the air. But if they want to find the Falcon's nest, it was really not easy. Because of this, the time was delayed. The people of the righteous faction were all guessing what the remnants of the evil cult wanted to do on this extremely desolate island. Sha Danan had been following his master and Xixiang to search for the falcon on Billows Hill. But privately, he had another worry. He was afraid that if he ran into Bai Yao, then what should he do? But it was strange, Bai Yao obviously came to Lubo Hill, this island, but after that stormy night, she never appeared again. But other falcon, including Nien Boss, Cynical Dialectian, and others who Sha Danan and Anan knew, appeared frequently. It seemed like they were searching for something. Master Vasp Kalo and Tian Belize had hundreds of years of cultivation. Encountering this kind of thing, they also felt it was a little tricky. This night, both of them gathered the people from Tian'in Temple and Funxiang Valley together for a discussion. Representing Tian'in Temple, naturally it was Fa Xiang, and Funxiang Valley's representative was actually someone familiar. It was Li Sun. Both of them looked like the outstanding talents of the younger generation, but in front of Taoist Vasp Kalo and Tian Bui, both of their expressions were very respectful. After greeting, Master Vasp Kalo said lightly, "Tu Shurji, this time we righteous are here to exterminate the falcon. There are many things that need your help. I thank you first." Fa Xiang and Li Sun bowed at the same time, said, "We do not dare. If there is any need, please tell us Vasp Kalo Shu." Tian Bui waved his hand, let them sit down first, said, "We do not need to say more nonsense. Until today, we have been at this EC island for half a month. Although there are falcon remnants here, but their movements are secretive, we cannot guess their intention. No, what do you two Shurji think?" Fa Xiang and Li Sun looked at each other, shook their heads. Vasp Kalo said to Li Sun, "Li Shurji, this news was first released by your Funxiang Valley. I ask if your faction knows the falcon's purpose?" Li Sun, in front of Master Vasp Kalo, this world-famous senior, did not have the usual arrogance on his face, immediately said, replying to Vasp Kalo Shu, "This news was also accidentally found out. After the revival of the falcon, suddenly a large number of remnants went to the East Sea Billows Hill, but for what, we do not know." Vasp Kalo and Tian Bui looked at each other. Fa Xiang suddenly said, "Tu Shu, according to what I saw these few days, the falcon traversed the mountains and ridges, often carefully searched every mountain, very much like they are looking for something important." Vasp Kalo pondered. "That's right, Tian Shitty, and I also think so. But what exactly are they looking for it to be so important?" Tian Bui frowned, then said, "If so, we cannot guess. But the falcon have always been sinister. After you go back, you must also be careful. We will continue to search during the day until we find the lair of the falcon, then annihilate them for the world." Fa Xiang and Li Sun said in unison, "Yes." After that, they discussed for a while. Fa Xiang and Li Sun took their leave. Watching the two of them walking out, Vasp Kalo suddenly said, "Tian Shitty, these two young people's aptitude is really not bad." Tian Bui slowly nodded. Master Vasp Kalo said, "Especially Sky Song Temple's Fa Xiang. I see his eyes are black and clear, but at the edge there seems to be a faint golden light. His eyes are warm and not dissipated. I'm afraid he's already achieved great success in Sky Song Temple's great Brahmin wisdom." Tian Bui sneered, said, "Don't look down on that Li Sun, although he deliberately kept a low profile in front of us. But for what my good-for-nothing little disciple said, his skills in Kongsing Mountain and Fire Dragon Cave, I'm afraid his skills may not be worse than Fa Xiang's." Vasp Kalo snorted, said, "Sky Song Temple and Incense Valley these past few hundred years, they have been secretly thinking of replacing our Jadian good faction leader position. Now, they deliberately cultivated these outstanding disciples and sent them out. Most likely they're trying to show off their power to us." Tian Bui glanced at him, suddenly said, "No matter. As long as we have Vasp Kalo Shixiang's few outstanding disciples, of course we are not afraid of them." Vasp Kalo's face changed, said coldly, "Tian Shitty, what do you mean?" Tian Bui stood up, said lightly, "What do I mean? I have a stupid disciple. Luckily, he won a few rounds in the Seven Peaks tournament and was able to follow your outstanding disciples out to train. But unexpectedly in the Falcon's land, after fighting with the Falcon, he was abandoned under the ancient cave. If not for his cheap life, I'm afraid I won't be able to see him. Kalo's face flashed with anger, said, Tion Shitty, you have to make it clear. What abandoned under the ancient cave? After Kevern and the others came back, I have asked him carefully. At that time, it was because Anin of Bamboo Height was too heavily injured, and after searching for several days, there was no news of your disciple at all. In Forsaken Abyss, there were many nether spirits and monsters, so they were forced to give up. What intentional abandonment! Towards the end of his words, his voice also became louder. Tian Bui did not show any sign of retreating, glanced at him, also loudly said, Humph, if your disciple was left under there, don't know life from death, you would have already turned the sky upside down. Their voices became louder, spread outside the cave. The Jadian disciples were immediately moved. All craned their heads to look inside. Tian Bui and Kalo were after all Taoist. They would definitely not do anything wrong in front of these juniors. Tian Bui lightly snorted, walked out without turning back. After a moment, Kevern and Bei came in. They were Master Kalo's most valued disciples. Only they dared to approach Master Kalo when he was not in a good mood. Kevern carefully asked, Master, why did you quarrel with Tian Shu? Beside him, Lin Jingyu indignantly said, This person is the most stingy. He really doesn't have the demeanor of a senior. Song suddenly shouted, Shut up. Lin Jingyu was startled, lowered his head and said, Yes, Shifu. Kalo glanced at him, then turned to Kevern. He still remembers that day you guys gave up looking for Shaw Danon. Kevern was surprised. Kalo snorted, Don't think he does not care much about that disciple. But that is in his own house. Outside, he is the most protective. Also, Shaw Danon helped him to show his face in Seven Peaks tournament. I heard he was actually very happy. Then he paused, then said to Kevern, Do you know this time Shaw Danon did not die and came back safely? It is very beneficial for you? Kevern did not understand, said, What? Kalo sneered. Aren't you close with his daughter, Hede? Kevern blushed. Kalo said, Although I asked Head Shixiang to speak for you, and he reluctantly allowed you to meet. But from his expression today, it is clear he is still holding a grudge against this matter. If Shaw Danon did not come back alive this time, I'm afraid you will suffer a lot in the future. Kevern was enlightened, nodded. Thank you, Master, for helping me. Kalo waved his hand, slowly walked to the cave entrance, looked at the cave where Tian Bui lived. His face was expressionless, silent. Bei and Kevern looked at him. His eyes were bright. Clearly he was thinking about something. Chapter 117. Ah, a soft cry. Shaw Danon woke up from his dream. He gasped in the darkness. He felt his whole body was soaked in cold sweat. These days, it seemed since the day when Fezin talked about Puji, Shaw Danon suddenly began to dream the nightmare of his childhood. The scene of the massacre of the village that was deeply engraved in his heart came to him like it was going to swallow him. The fire stick was still lying next to him. From the stick, there was a familiar cool feeling, as if everything was the same as before. But after that, Shaw Danon also felt from the strange esper tied to his right arm, it seemed to be the opposite of the fire stick, with a trace of warmth passed into his body. He suddenly felt breathless. In the darkness, in a place where no one could see, he quietly curled up his body. Who knows, people with too many secrets can also be so tiring. In the darkness, everyone else was sleeping peacefully. There were always disciples watching the night outside the cave, so everyone was at ease. Listening to their calm and familiar breathing, Shaw Danon was lost in thought. In the distance, that thin, gentle voice, which seemed to carry her unique voice even in her dreams, faintly drifted over. The darkness blocked his sight, but Shaw Danon felt he could see clearly. That beautiful woman smiled in this quiet night, sweetly fell asleep. But in her dream, who is it? He reached out his hand, gently held the fire stick, brought it to his chest, and snuggled it tightly, as if only it can accompany him, never leave him. In a trance, he suddenly remembered the pair of fox spirits who calmly went to death. If it were me, do I have the courage to die together with my loved one? He quietly thought in the dark night. The sun rose from the east, the sea breeze blew. This day the sky was clear and the clouds were thin. It was a sunny day. The Bamboo Peak disciples left the cave, flew toward the depth of Billows Hill on their esper, searching carefully along the way, hoping to find Falcon followers. Hede took the lead, Phoenix Soul, flashing red light, flying at the front, Xavion and Daji following closely behind her, Amandla and Shaw Danon flying at the back. In their line of disciples, other than Xavion, who used the celestial sword 10 tigers, the others used vermilion silk, precious brushes, strange and comical dice, fire sticks, and so on. In a situation where almost all the Jadian disciples used celestial swords, they were extremely eye-catching. But this place was, after all, not Xinyan Hill on Lubo Hill, not to mention the evil faction. Just the other good faction sect alone had more than 10. All kinds of magical weapons could be found everywhere, so it was not that outstanding. But when the various good faction disciples were bored, they would discuss in private. Some busybodies would comment on everyone's magical weapons, and there would be an expert who pointed out that this time at Lubo Hill, among the magical weapons in everyone's hands, the strangest was none other than a certain Jadian Big Bamboo Valley disciple's dice magical weapon, and the most rustic was actually a certain Jadian Big Bamboo Valley disciple's fire stick magical weapon. It could be seen that the Emerald Cloud sect was the leader of the world. There were indeed hidden dragons and crouching tigers, and they could not be underestimated. If Tion Belize heard such comment, what would he think? At this moment, the good faction disciples were flying in groups of 3 to 5. The wind was howling on Lubo Hill. All kinds of light flashed, very beautiful. Shaw Danon looked to the side from his esper and saw the good faction disciples were flying in a fan shape. And near this group, about 10 zhongs away, on the right was a group of girls. Naturally, there were the small Bamboo Valley disciples. Anan was also flying among them, her clothes fluttering, beautiful hair brushing her shoulders. Matched with her cold and beautiful face, she seemed to be out of this world. Shaw Danon's heart moved. He did not dare to look any longer. He turned around and looked at the other side. About 100 feet away, there were Dragon Head Peak's disciples. There were about 6 or 7 of them. Kevern and Bay were among them. At this moment, Bay also looked at them from far away, smiled, waved his hand. Shaw Danon smiled back. Behind the Dragon Head Peak disciples, there was a group of people. It seemed like they were the remaining Sunrise Peak disciples. At this moment, suddenly Hede's clear whistle was heard. Shaw Danon looked forward and saw Hede held her incantation mark. The Phoenix soul flashed with red light. With a sound of woo, it carried her beautiful figure, but directly soared into the sky. Its speed increased by several times. Xavion was surprised. He knew this Xiao Shimi was a very active person. It was a rare chance for her to come out, unlike Mount Jadian, where there were many restrictions. These days, once she came out, she often flew freely. Serene was very worried about her and told her daughter several times. Before they left, she also told Xavion to watch her. Just that Tion Linger grew up in everyone's doting. Song Darren would not even say a harsh word to her. How could he watch over her? Helplessly, he could only increase his speed and catch up. Shaw Danon, Hidaji, and others also drove their esper and followed closely. In a blink of an eye, they were far away from Dragon Head Peak and Bamboo Height. Shaw Danon increased his speed and caught up with Hede. He flew 10 feet away from her and peeked at her. He saw Tion Linger's face, revealing a smile, her expression excited. Today she was wearing a red dress. Matched with the amber vermilion silk, she looked even more beautiful. The wind howled in the air, but there was Hede's joyful laughter. Shaw Danon's heart warmed when he heard it. Xiao Shitty. Xavion's voice suddenly came. Shaw Danon quickly turned his head, said, "What is it to Shi Xiang?" Xavion was riding his giant sword, smiled. Xiao Shitty, did not expect your cultivation to improve so fast. In such a short time, you have already reached this level. Shaw Danon was grateful, said, "To Shi Xiang, this is all because of your teaching." Xavion shook his head, smiled. "I don't dare to take credit. You see, your speed is much faster than me, Lao San, and Lao Lu." Shaw Danon realized that when he saw Hede's speed, He was in a hurry to catch up and did not pay attention to the side. Unexpectedly, he was already ahead of his 3 Xixiangs. But looking at Song Darren, and he dodgy flying behind him, calm and composed. If they were to really fly, they might not be worse than him. Sha Danan blushed, said, "The Xixiang." Before he finished, Hidi turned her head, smiling. Seeing it was Sha Danan, she was even happier, loudly said, "Xiao Fan, is it comfortable flying like this? Look, how high is the sky? How blue is it?" Sha Danan turned his head, took a deep breath, smiled. The sky was high, the clouds were clear, the blue sky was endless. It really made people relaxed and happy. But how can it compare to the smile of his beloved girl in the depth of his heart? Hidi flew against the wind, her hair flying. Above her head was the blue sky. Below her feet was the green mountain. Far away was the endless blue ocean. Looking far, the sky and the sea were one. The landscape was like a painting, beautiful. Hidi's mood was very good. She smiled sweetly, turned around, and moved to the side. Sha Danan saw Hidi was flying near, looked at her, said, "Shiji, what is it?" Hidi smiled. "Xiao Fan, do you remember when we caught Ash?" Sha Danan was puzzled, said, "I remember. What is it?" Tianlinger reached out and grabbed his arm, smiled, and said, "Let's go." While Sha Danan was puzzled, Hidi's esper suddenly sank and fell down rapidly. Sha Danan hurriedly dropped his esper and followed her. Behind the two of them, Song Durin and the others were quite far away, so they didn't hear what the two of them said. They were caught unprepared, and the speed of the magic treasure was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it was already in front of them. The 3 of them cursed, quickly stopped, looked back, and saw Xiao Shimmy and Xiao Shitty, one in front and one behind, were flying into the green forest. They could not help but shake their heads, smiled bitterly, and quickly followed. Anyway, the order of the faction is to search for the falcon. Searching in the forest is the same. But this way, there was a distance between them and Sha Danan and Hidi. Sha Danan closely followed Hidi. In a blink of an eye, they arrived at the bottom of the forest. Hidi laughed softly, turned her head, and said, "Xiao Fan, hurry." As she spoke, the amber vermilion soul seemed to have a mind of its own. Like a spirit snake, it turned around and whistled under her pretty figure. Red light flickered as it flew into the boundless forest. Sha Danan looked at the red shadow in front of him. His blood was boiling. He did not think of anything else and flew straight down. The forest at the top of the mountain was the same as other places in Billows Hill. Giant ancient trees were everywhere, pointing straight to the sky. Even on the ground, there were many thorns and bushes difficult to stand on. Once the two of them entered the forest, they felt the surroundings suddenly became quiet. There was no sound of the wind beside their ears. The fresh air of the trees greeted them. Hidi was smiling. She stood on Phoenix Soul. Her body was like lightning. In this ancient forest, between the countless of giant ancient trees, she flew back and forth. Sha Danan looked at her from behind. That beautiful red shadow was flying up and down, quickly flying between the dense leaves. Accompanied by the sharp whistling sound, she was like the most beautiful fairy in the world. In this unworldly land, in the ancient forest, in a world of countless green leaves that seemed to be filled with laughter and faint cheers, she leaped out the most beautiful dance. That figure, like lightning, like light, stuck close to the body of the giant trees. It seemed extremely dangerous, but with a gentle grace, lightly slid past, never touched anything. That figure, like infatuated, like drunk. In the trance, it was the time of his youth. Green mountains, blue water, joyful laughter echoed. He suddenly laughed and let go. The fire stick bloomed with green light, carried him, chased after her, flying in this ancient and peaceful forest. As if this time, also like this, will never end. For some reason, the skies suddenly seemed to be a little gloomy, and the thick clouds in the sky also gradually increased. Sha Danan took back his gaze. He thought that this place outside the sea was after all different from the Central Plains. Just now it was a clear sky, but in a blink of an eye it seemed to have turned into a gloomy sky. He and Hidi flew in the forest for a long time, but did not even see a single falcon follower. Finally, in a small valley, Jade saw a small stream below. After flying for half a day, she was also a little tired. She called Jade to land and was using the stream water to wash her face. Chapter 118. The stream meandered through the ancient forest. It was shallow and clear. There were many round pebbles in the stream. Following the shimmer of the clear water, it was very beautiful. On both sides of the stream, there were some sand and stones. Further away, there was a dense forest. The forest seemed to be endless. "Xiao Fan," Jade suddenly called. Jade turned to her. Jade was washing her face. Then she found a very beautiful stone in the stream. She took it out, then turned to Jade happily. "Is this stone beautiful?" Jade looked at the stone. The stone was only the size of a thumb. There were 3 colors of stone lines neatly surrounding it like a ribbon. It was really beautiful. He smiled, raised his head, and looked at Jade. Just when he was about to answer, he opened his mouth slightly, unable to say a word. It was a familiar, beautiful face smiling at him. She had not wiped off the clear water from the stream when she was washing her face. The sparkling and translucent water droplets lightly covered her fair face. From time to time, the water droplets would gently slide down her skin, past her face, and under her smooth and soft lips. They would not go away. Finally, with a trace of moving grace, they would gently drip down. On that pair of clear and bright eyes beside the long eyelashes, there were a few water droplets condensed on them, like tears, but like the white pear blossom after the rain, so beautiful and moving. Jade said, "I am asking you." Jade woke up, said, "What?" Jade put the stone in front of his eyes, said, "Is it beautiful?" Jade took a deep breath. His voice was low, but it seemed like it came from the deepest part of his soul. "Very beautiful." Jade nodded and smiled. She took out a silk handkerchief and wiped off the water droplets on her face. Then she carefully wiped the stone, put it back into her clothes. She turned to Jade with the most beautiful smile in his eyes, said, "When we get back, I will give this stone to Jade. He will definitely like it." The sky of Billows Hill seemed to have darkened a bit at that moment. Jade stood there, suddenly frozen, lowered his head, motionless. Jade took a few steps forward and found there was no sound behind her. She turned her head and saw Jade was still standing there, surprised. "Xiao Fan, go." Jade slowly raised his head. His face slowly showed a smile. But for some reason, his lips were trembling. He said softly, "Shiji, we are walking too fast. Why don't we wait for the Xixiang and others?" Linger snorted, said unconcernedly, "Don't bother about them. Let's just walk along this small stream. Let's go upstream and see if there are any evil cult scoundrels. While we're at it," she covered her mouth and chuckled, saying, "And while we're at it, see if there are any more beautiful stones. What is this? Does it feel like my body is burning?" What was it that made him want to roar at the sky? It turned out that the demonic fire of the 9 underworlds was burning in the heart, ruthlessly refining the soul in the body bit by bit. He lowered his head, and his voice became strangely hoarse as he whispered, "All right." Phoenix Soul, wrapped around her waist, contrasted with her red figure. It was even more beautiful. They walked along the small stream for another half an hour. Along the way, Linger looked relaxed, looking around. Jade quietly followed behind her. The small stream was not big, but its length was not short. After walking for so long, they still couldn't see the source. There was a small hill in front of them, and at the corner of the hill, there was a stream. The stream was coming from there. Linger walked for half a day. She was a little tired. She turned to Jade, said, "Xiao Fan, it's getting late. Let's go check the stream. If we still can't find anything, let's go back." Jade silently nodded. Linger looked at Xiao Shidi a few more times. She felt a little strange, but she didn't put it in her mind. She turned and walked forward. The two of them quickly arrived at the bend of the mountain stream. When they looked inside, they were shocked. It turned out that behind the rock wall in front of them was an extremely large cave. It looked to be at least 100 feet high, and this small stream flowed out of this cave. Because the rock wall blocked their sight, not to mention flying in the air, Even if they stood a little further away, they still couldn't see the cave. It was very hidden. Tion Linger frowned, said to Shah Danon, "Should we go in and see?" Shah Danon glanced at the cave. Aside from the light at the entrance, it was pitch black. His heart felt uncomfortable. These days, especially after he left the mountain, he entered 2 caves. One was Cave of Fangs in Kongsang Mountain. The other was Dark Drake Cave outside of Laguna Collective. But he didn't have any good impression of them. Now that he saw the cave, he instinctively hated it. Plus his mood was very bad. He said, "Shiji, I don't think there is anyone living in this cave. Why don't we go back?" Tion Linger nodded, said, "All right. I also think so." Then we... Halfway through, suddenly, there was a sound of breaking air above their heads. After a moment, the sound of whoosh whoosh lingered on their ears. There were many people flying toward them. Shah Danon and Hede immediately raised their head and looked. After a moment, their faces turned pale. The attire of the group of people in the sky. They were Falcon people, and looking at the number of people, it was not less than dozens of people. They looked at each other. Tion Linger was smart. She knew there were many masters in the Falcon. If they hastily flew away, it would be hard to avoid. Under the danger, they had to take the risk. She pulled Shah Danon's hand and ran into the dark cave. Darkness engulfed both of their figures. Not long after, the evil faction people landed one by one. Their target was indeed around this mountain stream. After a while, someone seemed to light a torch, and then the crowd also walked towards this cave. Shah Danon and Tion Linger, who were hiding near the cave, had to find their way back to the cave. Their hearts were hanging in the air. The difference in strength between them was too big. If they were discovered, they would not be able to resist. Fortunately, because there were a lot of Falcon people, and they did not expect this place would be discovered by the righteous, they did not control their footsteps. So they were lucky enough to cover their slight movements and sound. Walking and stopping along the way, with great difficulty they arrived at a spacious place. The evil faction people stopped. The people around them who were holding torches very familiarly found some cracks in the rocks and inserted the torches into them. It seemed like they came here frequently. The empty space in the cave was brightened. Shah Danon and Tion Linger also stopped. They hid at a place where the light could not reach. They did not dare to breathe. Shah Danon peeped outside. The Falcon people formed a semicircle. Each of them found a large stone and sat on it. Some of them seemed rough, directly sat on the ground. Looking from afar, the Falcon people were really different from the righteous. There were many strange-looking people. Cynical Dialectian, who Shah Danon had a deep impression of, was also sitting among them. Next to him, Nian Boss, Lu Gao, Lin Feng, and that unknown, beautiful young woman were also together. Other than that, there seemed to be a young man standing behind them. His face was strange. Shah Danon had never seen him before. Tion Linger suddenly whispered into his ear, "Xiao Fan, look at the Falcon. There seems to be a lot of factions." Shah Danon felt his ear itched, but his heart was bitter. He did not dare to think too much. He nodded and looked outside. Just like what Tion Linger said, although the evil faction people outside formed a semicircle facing one direction, there were 2 or 3 people sitting there, but the rest were still sitting in groups. The division of the factions was very clear. Right at this moment, a low voice was heard from among the 2 or 3 people. "Everyone, please be quiet." Immediately, the Falcon people quieted down. It seemed like the owner of the voice had great authority. Shah Danon was far away. He could not tell who the voice was. He quietly stretched his neck and looked at the scene. But he felt the clothes next to him rubbed gently. It was Tion Linger who was also looking outside. The torches on the stone wall were quietly burning, occasionally making a crackling sound. A tall man with dark skin suddenly stood up from the Falcon, facing one direction, said loudly, "Envoy, this time Vim's sect summoned us to this deserted island. They said there is a strange beast Kuei Nyo that only appears once every 3,000 years. But after searching for so many days, not even a hair of Kuei Nyo could be found. Instead, it attracted those annoying people from the righteous, and they are fighting with each other all day long. May I ask, what should we do now?" Shah Danon, startled, whispered to Tion Linger, "What is Kuei Nyo?" Tion Linger thought for a moment. finally shook her head, said, I also don't know. Both of them looked at the scene again, saw that the person who started the conversation. Behind him many followed up, among them that wild dog Taoist, although his skills were not high, but his temperament seemed to be fiery hot. Therefore, among the crowd, his voice seemed to be the loudest. That is reasonable. Vim King is high up. Of course he will not care about this small matter. But why are we suffering here for no reason? Shouldn't you at least give me an explanation? Nien Boss frowned when he heard his rude words. He reached out his hand to pull him back, asking him to be quiet. Right at this moment, while everyone was discussing animatedly and making a racket, a sweet female voice suddenly sounded out, but the tone was rather cold as she said indifferently, Do you really want to know the reason? When a woman's voice came out, Shah Danan's heart was shocked. His body stretched out a little bit more. Under the light of the torch, at the direction where the falcon were facing, a green-dressed girl slowly stood up. It was Bailu. Chapter 119. Not only Shah Danan was surprised when he saw Bailu, the group of falcon who were noisy immediately quieted down when they saw Bailu. They seemed to be very afraid of Bailu. Even Wild Dog Taoist, who seemed to be fearless of heaven and earth, right now also did not make a sound. At that moment, no one dared to speak to her. But after a moment, someone lightly coughed, then slowly said, Miss Bailu, I have a few words. I don't know if I should say it. Shah Danan looked and saw the person who spoke was the unfamiliar young man who stood with Nien Boss and others. At this moment, looking at Nien Boss and the others, there was a look of surprise on their faces, as if they did not expect this young man to suddenly speak. Nien Boss frowned, whispered to the young man, Xiaozhou, where's the place for you to speak? Bila glanced at the young man, did not seem to know him, then asked Nien Boss, Who is he? Nien Boss quickly smiled. He is our Bloodforder's new recruit. His name is Zhou Kai. Bailu snorted, said, Doesn't matter. Let him speak. That young man called Xiaozhou did not have stage fright. He walked out and said calmly, Miss Biao, everyone here knows that you are the only beloved daughter of Vim King, so everyone respects you. And Vim King summoned us to find Kuei Nyo. We will not shirk. It's just that. He paused for a moment. A gentle smile appeared on his face, but the words in his mouth gradually turned cold. It's just that now we can't find Kuei Nyo. The number of good faction people is increasing day by day. I heard that even 2 of Qin Yun's sect's 7 great leaders have already come. We are even more not their match. In such a situation, Ghost King's sect still let us work blindly here and did not give any explanation. I'm afraid some of the sect members will ask, Don't tell me Ghost King's sect actually want to borrow the good faction's hand to get rid of us? Everyone was in an uproar. The few people beside Bai Yao also stood up abruptly. Looking at them, they were most likely the evil faction Ghost King's sect people. Just that other than the few from Ghost King's sect, the rest of the evil faction people after the initial shock did not reprimand this young man. Instead, all looked at Bai Yao, their faces vigilant, and the quiet discussions around started one after another. Shah Danan could not help but worry for Bailu. At the same time, he thought, why this young man named Zhou speak like that? They are all Falcon people, and there are so many factions. Could it be that Vim King usually? While he was thinking, he suddenly heard Bailu said coldly, Who are you? How dare you sow discord? Xiaozhou smiled faintly. Facing this powerful and beautiful lady, he did not have the slightest fear. He faintly said, I am only a nameless junior. I joined because I admire the holy sect. Compared to Miss Biao, the difference is like heaven and earth. Just that. Right now, the good faction warriors are coveting like tigers waiting to kill us. And Ghost King sect is one of the 4 great sects in our sect. Right now at this place, they are our leaders. Yet they placed us in danger and did not care. I'm afraid this cannot be justified, right? Even Shah Danan could feel that although Xiaozhou spoke calmly, every word was against Vim King. The intention to sow discord was very obvious, but he did not know what his intention was. But from the surprised look of Nien Boss and others, it did not seem like they were ordered by Bloodforder. At this moment, the other evil faction people became even more agitated. Their voices also gradually became louder. Facing the Ghost King sect people, their faces also gradually revealed hostility. Bailu frowned, took a step back, turned her head, and quickly whispered to the people behind her. Shah Danan looked from afar and saw the torch was burning, but it was not very bright. There was a tall man next to Bailu, and behind the tall man, there seemed to be a middle-aged man. But the place where he was standing was very dark and was blocked by the tall man in front of him. He could not see his face clearly. Bailu said a few words to that man, then turned her head, stepped forward, coldly looked around. Her beautiful face, like snow, under the dim light of the burning torch, there was a kind of bleak and desolate beauty. The surrounding voices quickly quietened down as everyone's gazes landed on her. Everyone, her voice echoed in the cave. Vim King is the same as everyone here, are all disciples of the holy faction, also believe in Nether Mother, Heaven Vidyaraja. This kind of thing that goes against the doctrine. No matter how powerful Vim King is, they will not dare to do it. Please do not worry. As soon as he said this, most of the evil cult people present relaxed. Yin Ba let out a long sigh, quickly went forward and pulled Xiao Zhou, whispered, "Are you done?" Xiao Zhou turned to Yin Boss, laughed, suddenly said loudly, "If so, we can relax a little. But, Miss Bailu, please explain about Kuan Yo. If you really cannot find Kuan Yo, it is better for us to leave early. Otherwise, even if Vim King has no intention to harm us, we will still die in the hands of the righteous." Bailu and other Vim King people stared at Xiao Zhou at the same time. But Xiao Zhou was like he did not know what kind of trouble he had gotten himself into. He was still smiling and standing there. But the dozens of Falcon people around him shouted at the same time, "You are right. Exactly. Miss Bailu, please give us an explanation." After the surrounding voices gradually quietened down, Bai Yao then retracted her gaze from Xiao Zhou, knowing now was not the time to be calculative, said, "Everyone, actually even if he did not say, our Ghost King sect will also have to give everyone an explanation. Actually, this time we came to East Sea Billows Hill is for..." Boom! The entire huge cave seemed to shake all of a sudden. Shah Danan and Hidi almost staggered in the deep of the cave. The Falcon people were even more surprised. Someone shouted, "What happened? Is it an earthquake?" But very quickly they got their answer. They heard the wind howling outside the cave, like the deafening thunder. A strong voice passed through the long cave and came in. "Evil faction thieves, quickly come out and accept your death." Everyone paled. Shah Danan and Hidi looked at each other. Their faces were filled with joy. They recognized it was the voice of head of Dragonhead Peak, Master Vas Kalo. Shah Danan was really impressed. From the outside of the cave to here, there was still a very long distance. Master Vas Kalo's voice was very clear. It even caused the surrounding rock walls to vibrate. This level of cultivation was really no small matter. Shah Danan was far inferior to him. The Falcon people looked at each other. Then someone said in surprise, "This place is so hidden. How could the righteous find it?" At this moment, Xiao Zhou suddenly said loudly, "Miss Bai Yao, this is the critical juncture. All friends heard that Ghost King's sect summoned us to Lubo Hill, but unexpectedly encountered such a great danger. What should we do?" When everyone heard that, they said, "That's reasonable. Miss Bai Yao, quickly say something." Bailu took a deep breath. The sound of breaking air was ringing outside the cave. The righteous must have gotten the news and rushed here. Bailu's face was gloomy. She stepped forward, said, "Friends, I don't know how the righteous know where we are. But now I, the only daughter of Vim King, am also trapped here, in the same dangerous situation as you guys. Do you guys still have any doubt on Vim King?" As soon as he said that, most people quieted down. The tall man next to Bailu stepped forward, said in a deep voice, "Everyone, this is a critical moment. Why don't we work together and fight against the enemy? If we work together and kill our way out, we may not lose to the hypocrites of the righteous outside." Everyone nodded. In fact, at this moment, there was no other way. The cave was large, but it was a dead end. There was no other exit. The Falcon people tidied themselves up, roared with courage, and swarmed out. Not long after, there were sounds of weapons clashing, people cursing and roaring, and in the cave that was originally packed, There was only Bai Yao of Ghost King sect, and that person standing in the shadows whose face could not be seen clearly. Sha Danan was happy, but at the same time, he was worried for Bailu. Although he knew she was a Falcon heretic and not the same person as him, but after several life and death experiences, he had a different feeling towards this unruly girl. Bai Yao frowned tightly, was about to turn back and speak to the person in the shadows. Suddenly, from the corner of her eyes, she saw there was still one person standing alone. He did not follow the rest to fight against the enemy. It was Xiao Zhou, not knowing when he actually stayed behind. This Xiao Zhou had incited them to be enemies against Vim King's sect several times. Bila did not have a good impression of him. Her face immediately darkened, sneered, and said, "You are not going to help your friends, staying here. What is your intention?" Xiao Zhou's expression was still gentle, unable to see the panic of the good faction soldiers pressing on, smiled and said, "I want to see from here if the Ghost King's sect people, are they really going to advance and retreat with us, these powerless pawns, or are they simply treating us as cannon fodder?" Bailu's face turned cold. When she was about to refute, the man in the shadow said, "You are not a member of our holy faction. What is your identity?" Chapter 120. Bailu was shocked, but the man called Xiao Zhou was also shocked. He looked at the shadow. His eyes were alert. He said in a deep voice, "Who is this? How can you talk nonsense like this? I am a disciple of Bloodforger. Just because I speak out for justice, you're going to slander me?" Sha Danan and Hidi were also surprised. They did not expect the situation would change like this. But Sha Danan's heart had another layer of doubt. That person's face was not clear, his voice sounded familiar, but he did not know where he heard it before. The man standing in the shadow said lightly, "Bloodforger was the leader of the holy faction 800 years ago, arrogant, but now it is already declining. With your talent, Nian Boss is not as good as you. How can he take you as a normal disciple? If he really has such ability, Bloodforger would have already turned over." Xiao Zhou snorted, said, "You have never seen me fight. How do you know my cultivation level?" That man seemed to smile, said, "Look at your cultivation level. Why do I need to see you cast a spell? Just now, that Taoist Vaskalo used Tai Chi Xian Xing Wei to force the sound into the rocks and shook the mountains. He wanted to establish his power. Those with slightly weaker skills will be shaken and lose their footing. Nian Lauda couldn't avoid it, but you seem to be fine. The difference in skills can be seen with one look. What's so difficult about it?" Xiao Zhou's face changed. He looked at the man in the shadow for a while, said, "Can't believe there are so many hidden dragons and crouching tigers in the Falcon. Who are you?" Bailu shouted, flew into the air, said angrily, "Die." Suddenly, in the dark cave, white light flashed, fragrance wafted. White flowers were dancing in front of Bailu, like frost and snow, circling endlessly. But no matter how bright the white light was, it could not shine through the man's shadow. They still could not see his face. Little Zhou didn't dare to be careless. He took a step back and stretched out his hand to grab at the air. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The sound of hissing could be heard. He actually grabbed a dazzling, immortal sword out of thin air. What was most eye-catching was that on the body of the sword that was as bright as autumn water, there were 7 bright stars carved on it. The man in the shadows suddenly whispered, "7-star sword." In the blink of an eye, Bai Yao and Xiao Zhou were already fighting. Both of them flew to midair, swords flying back and forth. This huge space, after their fight, seemed to have shrunk a lot. Sha Danan was listening on the side. He knew Xiao Zhou was most likely a righteous person. He was a little worried for him, but as he watched them fight, his eyes kept glancing at Bailu. His heart was really conflicted. He only hoped that both of them would be evenly matched, that it would end quickly, and Bailu would quickly escape. Just that at this moment, Tian Linger, who was beside him, suddenly whispered, "That Xiao Zhou, I'm afraid most likely is our Qing Yun sect disciple." Sha Danan was surprised, said, "What? You know him?" Tian Linger shook her head, glanced at the scene, softly said, "I remember I heard Mother say before, this 7-star sword is the famous celestial sword of Tongtian Peak. At that time, Daoxin teacher uncle also used it. Then I heard it was passed to—" Before he finished, suddenly Bayao shouted, The heartache flowers scattered in a blink of an eye. The wind howled. The entire cave was filled with dazzling white flowers like a sharp light wall, pushed over with the force of toppling the mountains and overturning the seas. Shah Danon had seen Bailu cast this spell several times. He knew its power should not be underestimated. He was worried about Xiao Zhou. Unexpectedly, Xiao Zhou frowned. His body stepped back 10 feet in the air. His right hand held the incantation mark. Left hand held his right wrist like holding 1,000 caddies, like drawing wild grass. His fingers whistled in the air and drew a Tai Chi diagram in front of him. Shah Danon and Tian Linger saw it. They knew Xiao Zhou was indeed a Jadian disciple. The incantation just now was Jadian's pure essence. In an instant, the Big Dipper sword turned upside down and stood in the middle of the Tai Chi diagram. Clang, 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 clang. The sharp vibrations continued, and after a moment, the Big Dipper's sword flew out like lightning. Around the sword blade, there was a Tai Chi light wolf flashing and circulating. Its power was impressive and unstoppable. Not long after, the two magical treasures collided with each other in mid-air. Rumble. After the loud noise, the light from the collision of the two espers quickly rushed out. The entire cave was roaring. The rock wall could not withstand the great impact. Rocks of all sizes fell down. Shah Danon and Tian Linger also felt the surrounding was shaking. They could not stand steadily. They were even more impressed. Xiao Zhou's cultivation on pure essence was probably stronger than all the Jadian disciples he had seen. The white light of Bailu's flower wall faded and disappeared. Her face was pale. Obviously, she suffered a little loss. Shah Danon had known her for a period of time. He knew it was bad. She would not let it go. Sure enough, Bai Yao's anger flashed past. The sorrowful flower flashed away. Her hand stretched to her waist, holding that crisp and beautiful golden little bell. Xiao Zhou frowned. He was on guard. The girl in front of him was young, but her skills were beyond his expectations. Just now when he attacked, he used 90% of his power, but he could only slightly injure her. But looking at her, it seemed like she had an even stronger magical weapon. However, what he feared the most was still the man standing silently in the shadows. He was truly unfathomable, and that was the true calamity. He could only hear the crisp sound of bells ringing. It was very incongruous in this murderous cave. Bila stood in midair, her hands waved. A golden bell slowly floated in front of her, ringing. From Shah Danon's point of view, the beautiful girl in midair, her hands were waving softly. The golden bell began to spin between her hands, making a clear sound. Ding-dang, ding-dang, ding-dang. Xiao Zhou was startled. He realized he was lost in thought. He almost forgot he was in a life-and-death situation. If not for his strong heart, he would have lost his mind. The small bell seemed to have the ability to attract people's soul. Just at that moment of hesitation, his mind felt stuffy again. He was surprised and did not dare to listen anymore. He shouted, "Devil die!" This loud shout shook the four walls, forcefully suppressing the clanging sound for a moment. The seven-star sword, like lightning, shot out with a loud bang. Bila's face was pale. It seemed like she was having a hard time. But seeing the seven-star sword rapidly approaching, she did not retreat. Her right hand's jade-like finger flicked outwards, and the Hihuan bell flew forward to meet the incoming attack. With a ding sound, it collided with the seven-star sword in midair. Xiao Zhou's body shook. He felt the demonic sound was like piercing his ears and bones. It came from seven-star sword. His whole body began to tremble. Shah Danon and Hidi were surprised. They were about to help, but suddenly Xiao Zhou's face calmed down. He shouted. Seven-star sword's light brightened again and counterattacked. On the other hand, Bailu's face was extremely pale. Her eyes were a bit dull. It seemed like she lost her mind and was powerless to resist. She was about to die under seven-star sword. Shah Danon's heart was shocked. His mind was blank. He jumped out and said, "Don't." Before he finished, a shadow passed by in midair. The purple energy flashed and disappeared. Pong! Little Zhou's entire body was knocked back and crashed to the ground. Immediately, blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth, and the seven-star sword flew out, and with a clang sound, it was inserted into the hard rock wall by a huge force. Sha Danan and Hede were shocked. They jumped in front of Xiao Zhou. Tian Linger was about to activate the amber vermilion silk. Unexpectedly, Xiao Zhou suppressed the severe pain, pulled both of them, hissed, "No, no, Zhang Jr. brother, Tian Jr. sister, that person's skills are too high. You are not his match." Sha Danan startled. Hede could not help but ask, "How do you know our names?" Xiao Zhou was about to say something, but stopped. They both felt something, turned, and looked at Bailu. In midair, a middle-aged man was holding Bailu and landed with his back facing Sha Danan and others. He said calmly, "Yao Er, this Ahuan bell is the divine relic left by Lady Jingling. Your cultivation is not enough. If you use it recklessly, it will easily backfire on you. Do not use it lightly in the future." Bailu's face returned to normal. She said quietly, "Yes, Dad." Sha Danan and others were startled. Xiao Zhou seemed a little better now. He stared at that person's back, said in a deep voice, "Are you the Vim King, one of the 4 Falcon Lords?" That middle-aged man smiled faintly, then turned around. Sha Danan and others could see his face clearly. He had thin eyebrows, square face, elegant eyes, very different from those vicious and rough Falcon people. But Sha Danan was even more surprised, asked, "It's you?" This middle-aged scholar like Vim King was the one who told him the secret of Fire Stick at the tea stall at the foot of Kongsing Mountain. Wan Ren Wang. Chapter 121. Sha Danan looked at the middle-aged scholar in front of him, who was the biggest threat to the righteous, Master Vim. His mind was in a mess. These days, deep in his heart, he often had a little doubt about his past belief. It was all because of the conversation at the tea stall at the foot of Kongsing Mountain. Now, he met an old friend again. This feeling was really complicated, almost made him forget the situation here and now. But even if he forgot, the people next to him will not forget. Xiao Zhou wiped the blood from his mouth, barely stood up, whispered to Sha Danan and Hede, "This person's cultivation is too high. Do not use force. I will hold him back. You two leave quickly." Then he waved his hand. 7-star sword, that was still slightly vibrating inside the wall, seemed to be summoned by him. Zheng broke the wall and flew back to his hand. Master Vim looked at Xiao Zhou, nodded, still had a smile on his face, said, "With your cultivation, it seems like you are the leader among the young disciples in Jadian. Can't believe Jadian has a talent like you besides this Sha Danan. Not bad, not bad." Sha Danan was surprised, but found his Shiji Hede and Xiao Zhou were looking at him. His face was a little hot, but he did not know what to say. Xiao Zhou took a deep breath, stepped forward, the 7-star sword in his hand brightened. Master Vim did not do anything, only stood there, smiled at him. Xiao Zhou knew this person was the strongest opponent he had ever met in his life. But behind him were his Shidi and Shimmy. He could not run away no matter what. He could only hope he could hold him back and let his 2 Shidi leave first. But just when he was about to channel his energy to control the sword, the blood in his chest suddenly turned over and rushed up. He could not hold it any longer, spat out a mouthful of blood. Sha Danan and Hede were surprised, rushed forward and held him. Xiao Zhou's face was pale. He knew he was hit by Master Vim. His internal organs were shaken. His meridians were damaged. He could no longer cast any spells. He was shocked, half because he knew he was in a desperate situation, the other half was because of the high cultivation of Master Vim. The harm to the righteous in the future was hard to estimate. Ghost King looked at him, suddenly said, "You are forcing yourself to fight. Are you trying to delay me for a while, so that your 2 fellow disciples can escape?" Xiao Zhou snorted, did not reply. Tian Linger instead stood up, blocked in front of him, angrily said, "Evil demon heretic Wei, don't think that just because your skills are higher you can be proud. I am not afraid of you." Sha Danan was surprised. Master Vim wounded Xiao Zhou with 1 strike. Anyone could see his cultivation was very high. The 3 of them together may not be his opponent. Looking at Tian Ling-er's fearless look, he was a little worried and went forward to pull her, hinting Tian Ling not to be too impulsive. Before Tian Linger could react, this action was seen by Ghost King and Bai Yao. Bailu's face darkened, snorted coldly. She looked at Hede, then at Shah Danan, suddenly said, Shah Danan, is this the Shiji Hede that you always mention? Hede and Xiao Zhou were surprised. Xiao Zhou frowned, said, Zhang Shidi, do you know both father and daughter? Shah Danan was silent for a moment, then said quietly, yes. At this moment, Tianling suddenly cried out, Ah, I recognize you. You are the Falcon heretic that sneaked here that night. Then we chased you to the island outside, said you were looking for Xiao Fan. Halfway through, she suddenly stopped, staring at Shah Danan. Shah Danan's heart was in a mess. In fact, what he feared the most was this kind of situation. Now it really happened, but he still did not know how to deal with it. Master Vim stood there, seeing Shah Danan's complicated expression. He still smiled. Young Mr. Zhang, since we parted at the foot of Kongsang Mountain, how are you these days? Shah Danan's heart was in a mess. He ignored him. Xiao Zhou frowned. His heart was puzzled. Seeing Master Vim and his daughter were looking at Zhang Shidi ambiguously, the relationship between them was probably not normal. Just that Qin Yun's sex rules were strict. It was even more strictly forbidden to associate with people from the evil faction. Just that they did not know what relationship this Zhang Jr. brother had with the two of them. It would be bad if he violated the sect rules. But this was not the time to ask. The three of them were still in danger. Xiao Zhou gathered his mind, turned to Master Vim, and was about to speak. But Master Vim looked at him, suddenly said, You forcefully used your true essence, secretly infused your spirit power in a Septus sword. Are you trying to use your remaining power to stall me, so that your two faction mates can have a chance to escape? Xiao Zhou's body shook. His face was ashen. He did not expect Master Vim's mind was so meticulous. With his cultivation, plus he was prepared, there was no way they could survive. Unexpectedly, Master Vim smiled, said, You do not need to be disappointed. I do not mean to trouble you. What? Xiao Zhou and Hede asked at the same time. Shah Danan was also surprised, looked at Master Vim. Master Vim looked at Bailu, then turned to Shah Danan, smiled. Young Mr. Zhang, that day in Kongsang Mountain Forsaken Abyss, you and Yaoer, our friends in adversity, experienced life and death together. Before he finished, Shah Danan's face changed. He felt Xiao Zhou and Hede were looking at him with strange eyes. He was about to say, Why you are lying. At this moment, Shah Danan saw Bailu's eyes. In her bright eyes, there was a bit of sadness. Suddenly, he recalled that stormy night. The world was austere, yet she was the only one who accompanied him in suffering. His heart inexplicably softened, and he was unable to continue speaking these words. And Ghost King's words still continued. And that day you even enlightened Yaoer, resolved the knot between us father and daughter for the past 10 years. It can be said that I am indebted to you. He smiled and said, Today on your account, I will let the three of you off. Just that in this way, in the future when you return to Qin Yin, you will definitely be blamed by those old fellows who do not know right from wrong. Why don't you join my holy sect? I will definitely think highly of you. You can live together with Yaoer. Isn't that? Shut up. Shah Danan could not hold it anymore. He pointed at Master Vim, shouted, Come and kill me. Even if I die, I will not join your falcon. Tian Linger heaved a sigh of relief, clapped her hands, and said, Well said, Xiao Fan. But Xiao Zhou looked at Shah Danan lightly. His eyebrows were still knitted. Master Vim smiled, shook his head, said, Fine, it is up to you. There is still a long way to go. You can slowly think about it. Then, he pulled Bai Yao and flew out of the cave without hesitation. Bailu suddenly turned her head and looked at Shah Danan in midair. Shah Danan saw her eyes. The anger in his heart became confused again. Xiao Zhou stood at the side, saw his expression, his eyebrows frowned tighter. Master Vim and his daughter quickly disappeared into the darkness. After a moment, the noise outside suddenly became louder, like the righteous were suddenly attacked. Soon after, the wind whistled. It seemed like many people were flying into the sky. Master Vaskalo's strong voice came. His voice shook the surroundings, said, Who are you? Your cultivation is so high. Why not come down and spar with me? This was obviously meant for Master Vim, but the wind whistled. No one answered. Master Vim and Bila must have gone far away. In the cave, it became quiet. Hidi looked at Xiao Zhou's pale face, said with concern, Zhou Shixiao, are you okay? May I know which martial uncle you are under? Sha Danan saw that Xiao Zhou was about to fall, so he quickly ran over and held him up. Xiao Zhou looked at him. Sha Danan felt a little uncomfortable. He lowered his head. Xiao Zhou sighed, then smiled, said to them, Don't call me Zhou Shixiao. This is a fake name I used to sneak into the Falcon. My surname is not Zhou. Tian Linger exclaimed, and said, Then you are? Xiao Zhou smiled. At the same time, his eyebrows twitched, as if there was a pain somewhere, but then he returned to normal, smiled, and said, I am Jade Tong Tian Peak, disciple of teacher Dao Xian. Surname Xiao, name Yikai. What? You're Xiao Yikai Xiao Shixiao. Xiao Zhou, who is Xiao Yikai, nodded with a smile. Sha Danan and Hidi looked at each other. This name, to them, was really a great name. It was late at night. The night sky above Billows Hill was shining with countless of bright stars, twinkling, shining on the world. In a secret place, Ghost King slowly walked out and saw Bai Yao standing alone on a small hill, staring blankly at the east side of Lubo Hill. That was the place where the righteous lived. Master Vim sighed, walked behind her, said softly, Yaoer, the night is heavy. You need to be careful of your body. Bailu's body moved, silently turned around, forced a smile. Yes, thank you, Dad. Master Vim saw her expression, suddenly said, You were thinking about Sha Dan and that kid? Bila blushed, but did not say anything. Ghost King's face revealed affection, patted his daughter's shoulder, walked 2 steps forward, said, Today when I saw him, I discovered that ever since he went to Huolong Cave with you, his skills seemed to have improved a step. Bailu startled. Then her face showed some joy, said, Really? Chapter 122. Master Vim nodded, said, According to my speculation, most likely he had some enlightenment after reading the first volume of Libra. At this point, he turned his head and smiled. Speaking of which, the first volume of the Tomes of Arcane that you brought out from the Blooddrop Cave after I read it, it was of great help to my cultivation of Tao. Bailu happily said, Really? Master Vim nodded, said, That's right. There are 4 volumes of Libra. Legend says there is a 5th volume, but no one has ever seen it. Since ancient time, our holy faction has passed down 4 volumes, but most of them are lost. The reason why our Vim can have today's glory is because the previous generation Master Vim accidentally found the 2nd volume of Libra. Speaking till here, he paused for a moment and continued. Just that in that 2nd volume, although the skills are profound, abstruse, and unfathomable, but the main principles words, the key incantations, are closely following the 1st volume. Therefore, these few hundred years, our Ghost King sect can only share the world with He Huan's sect, Chang Shun Hall, 1 Du clan, 3 big sections. But in the future, Bila smiled. Then I must congratulate Dad. Master Vim smiled and nodded, said, This time you really made a great contribution. Initially, when I sent you to Kongsang Mountain's Blood Forger Hall, other than letting you gain experience, it was only to find out if Senior Elder Blackheart left behind any treasure weapons. Unexpectedly, he brought back the Tian Shu. This is more than 10 times better than any treasure weapons. Bailu smiled, but her face suddenly darkened. Master Vim looked at his daughter for a while, then suddenly laughed. Bailu woke up. Her face blushed, said, Dad. Master Vim smiled and shook his head, said, Why are you so worried? Bailu gritted her teeth, said, Dad, you saw today. Sha Danan, that bastard, how he treated his Shiji Hidi, I am afraid. Master Vim said, Afraid of what? Afraid he is infatuated and has no feelings for you? Bailu lowered her head. Master Vim said lightly, My opinion is different from yours. Bailu was surprised, said, Dad, what did you say? Master Vim said, For what I saw today, Sha Danan is really good to his Shiji. But at the critical moment of the battle between you and Xiao Zhou, he could not control himself, cried out, and jumped out without caring for his own safety. Just based on this, in addition to the fact that you've gone through life and death situations with him in the past, perhaps he doesn't understand it himself. but in his heart, your weight might not be any less than that of his senior sister. Bailu blushed again. Under the night, she looked even more beautiful. But then her eyes moved. There was unconcealable joy. Ghost King saw her expression, walked over and gently stroked her hair. His concern was unmistakable. He said, "But you cannot be happy too early. First of all, the difference between sex is a hurdle that he cannot cross over. Secondly, his teachers and uncles in Chinyan's sect will not allow him to have any affection towards you. That is why when I left today, I purposely made your relationship ambiguous. I think that Xiao Zhou's position in Jadian is not low. If he goes back to pass the message, Jadian will be suspicious of Sha Danan. In this way, the possibility of him seeking refuge with our holy sect has increased by a few points." After saying that, he seemed to be very proud of what he had done and chuckled twice. Bila laughed at first, but soon after, she slowly put away her smile, lowered her head. Master Vim frowned, said, "What is it?" Bila hesitated, said softly, "I am a little worried. So, Xiao Fan is going to suffer again." Master Vim snorted, said, "If there is no grinding, how can he know the sharpness of the sword? If he cannot even endure this little bit of suffering, not to mention I will not be assured to leave you to him. Even if I let him join my faction, I will still look down on him." Bila nodded slowly, but for some reason, she was still worried. She looked to the east, but under the sky, the sea of trees blocked her sight, as if thousands of mountains and rivers were far away. Xiao Ikai's sudden appearance caused a commotion in Jadian. Master Vaskalo and Tian Belize were surprised and happy. And from Xiao Ikai's mouth, they also found out that the evil sect seemed to be searching for the strange beast Koen Nyo that appeared on Lubo Hill, and unexpectedly found out that even one of the evil sect's 4 great sect leaders, Ghost King, had also come here. At this moment, because Xiao Ikai was injured, he was lying on a temporary stone bed. His back was leaning against the stone wall. There were only Master Vaskalo and Tian Belize around him. The other disciples were temporarily sent away. Master Vaskalo nodded slowly. His face was serious, said, "So that person is the Falcon Vim's new generation Vim King. His cultivation is really high." Tian Belize frowned, said, "Ikai, how did you get into the Falcon?" Xiao Ikai smiled and said, "That day, I was ordered by my teacher to sneak into Kongsang Mountain to investigate the Falcon's whereabouts. As expected, I found the remnants of the Falcon's Bloodforger were active there. But after many secret observations, these remnants of the Bloodforger were not great enemies. Nothing to worry about. Just that I heard them talking about the Holy Sect many times. It seemed like there was some secret big movement in the Falcon. In order to investigate, I changed my name to Xiao Zhou. Coincidentally, they were in need of manpower. Seeing that I still have some ability, I actually successfully joined the Falcon." Speaking till here, he said to Tian Belize apologetically, "But Tian Shu, that day when Zhang Shidi and Anin from Bamboo Height fell into Forsaken Abyss, I was assigned to the other side to deal with Sky Song Temple's Fezan Shixiang and the others. I was not able to rescue them. I'm really sorry. Fortunately, Junior Marshal Brother Zhang is blessed with good fortune and is safe and sound. I am relieved." Tian Belize smiled. "Don't worry, this is not your fault. You don't have to worry about it." Master Vaskalo, who was listening at the side, suddenly snorted. Tian Belize heard it, but did not pay attention to him. Master Vaskalo turned to Xiao Ikai and said, "But come to think of it, Itsai Shurji, your action is really too risky. You must know that the Falcon traders are all sinister and cunning. If it is not done well and you are hurt, I can't answer to Head Shixiao." Tian Belize also nodded and said, "That's right. Before we left the mountain, Head Shixiao was worried about you after not hearing from you for several months. He especially told us privately to pay attention to your whereabouts." Xiao Ikai's face darkened, shook his head and said, "AI, it is all my fault, making teacher worried." Taoist Vaskalo smiled and said, "You don't have to think too much. This time you have made a great contribution. After we clean up the evil faction remnants here and return to the mountain, Sect Head Shixiao will definitely not blame you. I'm afraid he will even reward you handsomely. Who knows? Xiao Ikai blushed and said, Vasp Kalo Shirshu, you must be joking. Tian Belize lightly said, This is not a joke. You have made a great contribution this time. But Xiao Ikai, don't do this kind of dangerous things anymore. Head Xixiang thinks highly of you. After he ascends to immortality, the position of head will most likely be passed on to you. At that time, you'll have a heavy responsibility. Don't be willful and rash anymore. Xiao Ikai solemnly said, Yes. Thank you Vasp Kalo Shirshu and Tian Shirshu for your teachings. Master Vasp Kalo nodded and said, All right then, I see you are tired. Rest early. Luckily your injury today did not damage your meridians, or else it would be troublesome. Xiao Ikai saw Master Vasp Kalo and Tian Belize stood up. He also wanted to stand up and send them off. Tian Belize stopped him. He shook his head and said, You are injured. Just rest well. These customs, we are not exempt from it just because we are in Mount Jadian. Xiao Ikai could not disobey him. Plus his body was really tired. He leaned back against the wall again and said, Thank you, Shirshu. Forgive me for not sending you off. Master Vasp Kalo waved his hand and walked out with Tian Belize. They were about to reach the cave entrance. Suddenly Xiao Ikai called out from behind, Tian Shirshu. Tian Belize startled. He turned around and said, What is it? Xiao Ikai leaned against the wall. He smiled and said, Look at my memory. I almost forgot. Last year when I went to Big Bamboo Peak to visit you, Suru Shirshu mentioned that she wanted a specialty of the southeast coast, big shell pearl. Coincidentally, I came to EC this time and found one. Does Shirshu want to look at it now? Tian Belize pondered for a moment. He looked at Xiao Ikai. He smiled and said, Hey, if you did not mention, I would have forgotten about it. Luckily you are considerate. Or else I will be annoyed to death by your serene Shirshu when I return to Bamboo Peak. Then he smiled and walked back. Taoist Vasp Kalo paused for a moment. Naturally he would not inquire about this pearl and walked out. In the cave, only Tian Belize and Xiao Ikai were left. Tian Belize smiled and walked toward them. But when he sat down in front of Xiao Ikai, the smile on his face was gone. He looked back and said, Your serene Shirshu's temper is always calm on the outside but anxious on the inside. 100 years ago, she already went to the East Sea and found that pearl. There is no one here. What is it? You can say it. Xiao Ikai nodded, looked at Tian Belize and said, Shirshu is really wise. I asked Shirshu to stay, is to talk to you about your Sha Dan and Zhang Shidi. Tian Belize frowned. He was surprised. What about him? Xiao Ikai coughed and purposely lowered his voice. Tian Belize immediately understood. His body slightly leaned forward, attentively listening. The cave was completely silent. At this moment, the only thing that could be heard was the faint sound of people whispering. Chapter 123. The atmosphere, without knowing when it started, became somewhat oppressive. Tian Bui slowly straightened his body, his expression uncertain, unable to tell what he was thinking in his heart. Xiao Ikai was silent for a while, said, Tian Shirshu, I have also hesitated for a long time about this, but I thought it would not be good to hide it from you. Tian Belize took a deep breath, nodded. Xiao Shirji, I understand what you mean, thank you. Xiao Ikai nodded, seemed to recall something, said, Tian Shirshu, I think although Zhang Shidi knows Vim and his daughter, but it seems he has not entered the heretic path. Just that the Falcon are sinister and cruel. Zhang Shidi is still young. I am afraid he will be in danger. Tian Belize snorted, his face like frost, coldly said, That bastard, see how I will teach him a lesson when we get back. Xiao Ikai glanced at him, said, Tian Shirshu, I have something to say, I don't know. Tian Belize said, Speak. Xiao Ikai said, Yes. Tian Shirshu, the reason why I told you about Zhang Shidi in private is I hope you can handle it well before it gets out of hand. Vasp Kalo Shirshu has always been in charge of Jadian's punishment. His character is also very unyielding. If he knows, I am afraid Zhang Shidi, but he is after all your disciple, and these years you must have spent a lot of effort on him. If it really gets out of hand, you and Vasp Kalo Shirshu won't look good. So, he lowered his voice, said, If Zhang Shidi did not make any big mistake, you can teach him privately. Tian Belize raised his head, looked at him deeply, suddenly said, Xiao Shu, you really have the air of a general. It is not in vain that sect head Shi Xiang valued you so much. Seems like the position of sect head will belong to you. Xiao Yikai slightly lowered his head, said, Tian Shu, you are flattering me. Tian Belize's expression had returned to normal, smiled faintly. All right, you should also rest quickly. This time your good intentions, my big bamboo peak, will remember. Unknowingly or intentionally, he emphasized the words big bamboo peak. Xiao Yikai seemed not to understand anything, smiled. Shu is too polite. Tian Belize nodded, stood up, and walked out. Tian Bui stood alone in a secluded corner of the forest, hands behind his back. It was already late at night. The sky was dotted with stars, and the bright moon hung high in the sky. The bright moonlight shone through the lush foliage of the forest and fell on his body. In the darkness, his brows were slightly furrowed, and it was obvious that he was thinking about something. At this moment, footsteps suddenly sounded behind him. Tian Bui turned around, looked back, suddenly startled, said, It's you? The person who came was his wife, Serene. In this desolate night, in the quiet forest, she quietly walked over. It was as if all eyes were on her in an instant. It was as if all these years had not erased her beauty in the slightest. Serene walked closer, looked at Tian Belize. The corner of her mouth revealed a trace of smile, said, You just asked Aaron to come back and asked Xiao Fan to come here. Xiao Fan coincidentally is not here. I asked him to go to Vidra Sect Hercules to take a look. He should be here soon. Tian Bui nodded, looked at Serene, seemed like he wanted to say something, but didn't open his mouth. Serene said lightly, You went to see Xiao Yikai last night, and have been frowning since you came back. What's the matter? Tian Bui let out a long sigh. His face relaxed a little, smiled. I know, I can't hide it from you. Then, he told her what Xiao Yikai told him about Sha Danan. Serene listened quietly, pondered for a moment, then shook her head. Let's not talk about whether Xiao Fan really knows the Falcon's master Vim and his daughter. But even if they do know each other, to say that Xiao Fan has joined the Falcon, or even that he is a spy sent by the Falcon in a Jadian sect, I definitely don't believe it. Tian Bui snorted, said, You don't need to tell me that. I already know. I've taken in 6 disciples in the past, from the eldest to the 6th, but none of them are so troublesome and annoying. Suru glanced at him and smiled. But from the eldest to the 6th, there is no one like him who showed your face in the 7 Peaks test. Tian Bui was stunned, but he didn't want to admit defeat. He rolled his eyes, said, Humph, is that called showing my face? He was struck by lightning like a scorched stone. Suru laughed and said, My Tian Shi Xiang, I heard that 300 years ago, when you participated in 7 Peaks tournament, you only got into the top 4. Tian Bui was brought up by his wife. His face was a little embarrassed, said, Then didn't I? Didn't I still remember at that time, the night before the contest, I still went to find you, and sneaked out with you to watch the moon and stars on peak of Tong Tian's Rainbow Bridge. Didn't sleep the whole night. When it was time for the tournament, I didn't have any energy. How can I be one Shi Xiang's opponent? Suru spat at him, but a faint blush appeared on her face, looking extremely gentle, as if she had returned to that night when she was young. Wan's senior brother is gifted by the heavens, extremely intelligent, in our generation of disciples. Other than Daoxian sect head senior brother, in terms of cultivation, there is no one else who can compare to him. Who are you? Getting into the top, for already made your master smile so much, and you still want to beat Wan Shi Xiao? Tian Bui laughed. Obviously his mood was also better, said, Wan Shi Xiang is naturally far better than me. But you chose me between him and me. It can be seen that I'm still better than him in some aspects. Suru rolled her eyes at him and said, I was bewitched and blinded back then. That's why I followed you. Tian Bui didn't get angry, only looked at his wife, laughed, eyes full of joy, suddenly reached out his hand, held Serene's soft hand. Serene glared at him, whispered, You are already so old. Why are you still so mushy? What's more, Xiao Fan will be here soon. If he sees it, what will it look like? Tian Bui smiled, but didn't speak. Serene slightly lowered her head, but didn't pull her hand back. The night was like water. There was no one around. The cool night breeze quietly blew past, ruffling the treetops in the night. In the forest, it was very quiet. After a long while, Suru suddenly said, "Actually, I feel that Xiao Fan right now is very similar to you at that time." After speaking, she raised her head, looked at Tian Bui, and said, "Do you feel it yourself?" Tian Bui was startled, said, "Really?" Suru smiled and said, "What expression is that? Actually, at that time, you also looked like an idiot. Everyone thought you couldn't compare to those high-spirited senior and junior brothers. But in the end, in your big bamboo peak branch, the one with the greatest achievement, the highest cultivation was instead you. Your master also passed the head position to you." Tian Bui snorted, said, "That is called introverted, not idiot." Serene laughed out, shook her head, and said, You're getting older, your skin is also thicker, really can't do anything to you." Pausing for a moment, she continued, "But speaking of Xiao Fan, I don't believe that you can't see, based on his performance in these 2 years, even if he is not as smart as Bayanan, but he is not a fool. I think he is at least above the average. Just that in the first few years, he was left out by you, he felt a little inferior, looked like he was timid and a little wooden." When she spoke up to hear, Suru seemed to have thought of something, and she went silent for a moment before she said, "But I've always been unable to wrap my head around how he used an entire 3 times the time of an ordinary person to cultivate the most superficial Dao art of the ultimate clarity, Dao, all those years ago." Tian Bui shook his head, spat out the anger in his chest, lightly said, "Now I don't need to think so much. When Lao Chi is here, I will naturally ask him, these days, what did he actually do? What else did he do that we don't know?" Serene glanced at him, said, "Then you better not be fierce to him later. Before he can speak, he will be scared speechless by you." Tian Bui snorted, said, "Also don't know why. Sometimes when I see him like that, there is a gush of anger coming out of my heart." Suru smiled and said, "Actually, you still want to let this disciple of yours who has the most promising future to be better, not only to improve his cultivation, but also in dealing with people and matters. You also want him to be like Keheo, Shaokai, to benefit from both sides in the future." Speaking till here, Suru sighed slightly, did not continue. Tian Bui was silent for a moment, said, "What is it?" Serene looked at him, hesitated for a moment, then said, "Bai, with your personality, after so many years, you still haven't changed like one Shi Xiao so." Tian Bui was silent for a moment, then slowly nodded. "I know what you mean. No need to say more." Serene looked at him for a moment, then suddenly smiled. If Xiao Fan knew that his master, who always looked down on him, actually has the highest expectation on him, I wonder how happy he will be. Tian Bui snorted, face full of disdain, turned his head, said, "With his stupid look, he still has the highest expectation on him? Don't dream." Suru was behind him, looking at him with a smile, feeling his palm that was still holding her hand, warm and broad, as if, these 300 years, nothing had changed. Quietly, she tightened her grip on his hand. Shah Danon and Xavion left the place where Onara and his master herald of valor lived. Onara's muffled laughter was still echoing in their ears. On their way, the night was getting darker. Except for a few disciples who were on night watch, everyone slowly returned to their residence. Chapter 124. Seeing that they were about to reach the cave where Bamboo Peak lived, Xavion was a bit worried, turned to Shah Danon, said, "Xiao Fan, what I told you just now, do you remember it?" Shah Danon said, "Yes, to Shi Xiao." Xavion nodded, said, "I don't know why Master is looking for you, but I saw after he came back from Ino Ikai Shi Xiao, his eyebrows were frowning. I'm afraid there is something unhappy." Shah Danon was silent. His heart was even more uneasy. He didn't know if Ino Ikai told Master about King Vim and Bailu. If that is true, when Master asks, he really doesn't know how to explain. Xavion saw Shah Danon did not speak, thought he was afraid, smiled, patted his shoulder, said, "Xiao Fan, you don't need to worry too much. Although Master is usually strict, but in his heart, he really cares for us Shi Xiaos." Then he paused, lowered his voice, said, "But don't be impulsive again. If you contradict Master, then we can't ask for mercy for you." Shah Danan's heart warmed, gritted his teeth, looked at Xavion, whispered, "To Shi Xiang, I treated you like that a few days ago. Really sorry. Don't blame me." Xavion laughed, patted Shah Danan's head, smiled. "Why are you saying this? Let's go. Don't let Master wait for too long. But this day is really strange. Just a moment ago the moon was hanging. How come the dark clouds came? East Sea, after all, is different from our central plains." Shah Danan raised his head and looked at the sky. The sky seemed to have darkened. The bright moon was now passing through the dark clouds. The light was greatly weakened, making people feel depressed. While they were talking, they had returned. Xavion and Shah Danan stopped. They could hear the laughter of Hede and Amandla coming from the cave. Shah Danan was silent for a moment, then said to Xavion, "To Shi Xiang, then I will not go in. I will go directly to the forest to find Master." Xavion looked at him, nodded, said, "All right, go quickly, but it is a bit dark now. You need to be careful in the forest, understand?" Shah Danan smiled, nodded, and walked toward the forest. Song Darren looked at his back, and suddenly felt that his junior brother was a little lonely. He sighed, shook his head, and turned back into the cave. As soon as he entered the forest, the darkness seemed to whistle from the depths of the forest, surging over and surrounding his figure. Shah Danan paused, his heart moved, but after a moment, his eyes gradually adapted to the forest environment. The remaining moonlight in the night sky shone through the dense branches and leaves, and when it fell on a deserted place, there was a faint light. Everything in the forest was quiet. There were no birds chirping in the day, no beasts breathing, and even the low chirping of insects that could be heard everywhere seemed to be absent at night. There were tall and towering trees everywhere, towering and erect. In the darkness, they were like silent warriors. Only the sound of the wind, the sea breeze from far away from the depths of the sea, blew over the top of the forest, rustling the treetops. In the dark and deep forest, a young man walked alone. Shah Danan's thoughts suddenly drifted away. In this dark and deep forest, in the silent night, he suddenly remembered a long, long time ago. Under the dim light, he was still a child, snuggling in his mother's arms, facing the darkness outside, eyes wide open with a touch of fear. So, unknowingly, that period of time in the past has been so far away. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, then shook his head, quickened his steps, and continued to walk forward. But he did not notice, on his way, in the depths of the darkness, suddenly two balls of red light, like burning flame of hatred, silently lit up. Like a person, angry eyes. Tion Belize frowned, a little impatient, said, "What's going on? It's been so long, still not here." Serene looked at him, said, "How can it be so fast?" Darren went to find him, and then he came back from Herald of Valor's place. Even if he ran, it will take a while. You can't let him ride the clouds and fly here just for this small matter, right? Tion Bui snorted, looked up at the sky, startled for a moment, said, "Strange, why did the sky change so fast in the East Sea?" Surin looked around, also frowned slightly, said, "Yes, it was bright just now." Then dark clouds covered the sky. But she did not take it to heart, changed the topic, asked another matter. "Bui, since just now I have one thing that I don't understand." Tion Bui looked at her, said, "What?" Surin said, "If Xiao Fan is really acquainted with Master Vim and his daughter like Xiao Yikai said, he should tell Vasp Kalo Shixiao. He should be very clear about this. But he told you privately, objecting to Vasp Kalo Shixiao hiding it, and he is not familiar with our bamboo peak. I feel something is not right." Tion Belize was silent for a moment, said lightly, "This person is not simple." Surin frowned slightly, said, "Why?" Tion Belize did not answer her directly, only pondered for a while, said, "As far as I know, Head Shixiang has been focusing on cultivation for these years. He no longer cares about the matters in the sect. Most of the trivial matters are handed over to the elders led by Vasp Kalo." Then he paused, sneered. "Now, there's a rumor in the sect that Vasp Kalo is now the head of Dragon Head Peak." Suru's body shook, Worry on her face, she pulled Tian by his sleeve, quietly said, "You must not say this outside." Tian Bui nodded, said, "I naturally understand, don't worry." After speaking, he pondered for a moment and continued, "You also know, for the past 2,000 years in our Qingyan sect, especially since Qing Yi founder established the Qingyan 7 branches, this sect head position has always been taken over by the main sect Tongtian Peak disciples. But now," Serene smiled, continued, "but now, vast Kalo Shixiang is highly respected in the sect, his cultivation is also strong, his reputation is second only to Doyle Shixiang. Originally, Xiao Yikai taking over the position of head was not a problem, but now it seems there is some doubt," Tian Belize said lightly. "And for these 200 years, Vast Kalo has been in charge of the punishment in Jade. Usually he means what he says, other than Doyle Shixiang. He does not care about anyone. It is normal for Xiao Shiji to be worried." Surin lowered her head, said after a while, "Belize, this fight for the position of head involve a lot of things, don't get too deep into it." Tian Belize shook his head. "How can I not know? But I'm the head of house, how can I avoid it? Since Xiao Yikai showed kindness to me, most likely it is to leave some phase for the future fight. Anyway, we can only take one step at a time. Take one step at a time." Suru sighed, nodded and said, "We can only do that." Ooh. From an unknown depth in the forest, suddenly a gust of Een wind blew over. Sha Danan felt a chill on his neck. He raised his head and saw the sky, full of shadows of trees, dancing like demons. He frowned slightly. He felt that the forest tonight was filled with a ghostly aura. It was very different from a past. But then he thought, he had lived here for many days, never saw any evil beings. Could it be that when the sky gets darker, there will be evil beings? Thinking of this, he found it funny and was about to walk forward. Suddenly, a ghostly howl rang out from behind him, piercing straight into his ears. Sha Danan was shocked. He immediately turned around, and his face turned pale. In the darkness behind him, a skull flickering with dark red light slowly lit up. It flew into the air and spun endlessly. In the ghost howl, the red skull gradually stopped. Its face was facing Sha Danan. Sha Danan could see in the deep eyes. There seemed to be some fire. He couldn't help but shiver. A moment later, 2 more figures slowly rose from behind the ghostly creature. Under the light of the red skull, Sha Danan saw one of them was a tall and thin old man. His face was ferocious and haggard, almost skin and bones. His appearance was not much different from the red skull. His eyes stared at Sha Danan, full of resentment. The other person looked quite embarrassed. Although he was quite tall, he was carried by the old man like a chicken, unable to move. His face was filled with helplessness and frustration. Sha Danan fixed his eyes on it, couldn't help but surprised, said, "Huh. This person looked familiar, a familiar person." It was the cynical dialectian he met at Kongsing Mountain under Cave of Fangs, and he met several times at Billows Hill. He was held by the haggard old man's right hand by his collar. His face was crying. But then he saw Sha Danan was standing in front of him, looking at him with a surprised face. Immediately, like he saw his savior, he pointed to Sha Danan and shouted, "Ah, that's him, that's him." Sha Danan was surprised. Seeing cynical dialectian was pointing at him and shouting, he did not know what it meant. But the old man glared at him, said with a harsh and hoarse voice to cynical dialectian, "Is it this Jadian brat?" Wild Dog nodded his head repeatedly and said, Yes, it's him, Senior Vampire. It's this bastard who killed your only successor, Vampire Jiang Laosan." Chapter 125. This ferocious-looking old man was an old demon who had lived in seclusion for many years in the evil faction. He called himself Vampire Ancestor. The good faction people, including many in the evil faction, privately called him Vampire Old Demon. The main reason was that the evil skill, great art of sucking blood that he practiced, required sucking the blood of living people into the body to practice. It was very strange and terrifying. But although this evil skill was powerful, it also had a backlash on the cultivator. So those who practiced the blood-sucking evil skill all looked ferocious and could not be seen in the world. Even in the evil faction, there were many who privately criticized it. But then again, this evil skill was not to be underestimated. 100 years ago, when he was born, there was once a reign of terror, causing endless headaches for the good faction people. But after the evil faction lost power, the good faction joined hands to suppress Vampire Old Demon to escape the pursuit of those good faction masters, gradually retreated from the central plains with the evil faction, and after that there was no news of him. This time the evil faction was reviving. The demons danced together. Vampire Old Demon was originally from one of the 4 main sects of the evil faction. One Du clan was also invited. And before he left the mountain, his only disciple, Vampire Jiang Lao San, because he and Wild Dog Taoist, Lu Gao and the rest were birds of a feather, he was roped in by Wild Dog and the rest to help them. But unexpectedly in the Cave of Thousand Fangs, he was mysteriously killed. After Vampire Old Demon knew about it, he was furious. One must know that his branch, because of the bad reputation of the blood-sucking evil skill and the dangerous and unpredictable training process, if one was not careful, the evil skill would backfire on him, and he would explode and die. So even in the evil faction, there were very few people who were willing to train. This Jiang Lao San was a disciple that he had finally found 10 years ago. His character was just right for his eccentric temper, so he liked him very much. Unexpectedly this time, he died for no reason. How could he not be furious? Recently, there was a big movement in the evil faction. Ghost King sect was the first to open the way, coming to this East Sea desolate land, Lubo Hill. After that, the other 3 main sects also sent out strong reinforcements. Vampire Old Demon was one of them, calculating he only arrived at Lubo Hill today. Coincidentally, he happened to bump into Wild Dog and the rest of the Blood Forger Hall's people. Nian leader, Lu Gao and the rest were all cunning people. Seeing Vampire Devil's gloomy face, they knew that this old devil was eccentric and violent. They guessed that he must still be holding a grudge against his disciple's death, so they all ran away as fast as they could. But this Wild Dog Taoist character, to put it nicely, was a straightforward character. To put it negatively, he was slow to react. He actually went up to greet Vampire Demon and even said things like, "Old senior, long time no see, I didn't expect your body to be as healthy as before." Before he could finish, Vampire Devil felt that Wild Dog deserved to die. Not only did he drag my disciple to his death, he even dared to mock me for being old and not dying. In his rage, he picked up Wild Dog with one hand. Wild Dog Taoist then felt something was wrong and was so frightened that he kept begging for mercy. Vampire Devil did not waste any time, only said to him, "Now we will go to Jade and find the bastard who killed my disciple. If you find him, consider yourself lucky. If not, I will suck your blood dry as a sacrifice for my disciple." These words made Wild Dog's face pale. He cried bitterly but could not stop. Since he came to Billows Hill, Shaw Danon had seen Wild Dog Taoist several times. But Wild Dog Taoist was either fighting with others or escaping in the air. He never saw Shaw Danon. Including the time in the hidden cave, Shaw Danon was also hiding in the dark. When he came out, Wild Dog had already rushed out with the others and were fighting with the righteous disciples. Wild Dog thought to himself, who knew if that little bastard had come to Lubo Hill, if he did not come under the wrath of Vampire Demon? Wouldn't he die an unjust death? He begged incessantly, but Vampire Demon's heart was like stone. He turned a deaf ear to him, carrying him, and secretly flew to where the people of the good faction lived. In the dark forest, he suddenly saw Shaw Danon's figure. Wild Dog Taoist was overjoyed. He was happier than seeing his own parents. He immediately shouted, "That's him. That's right. I can recognize him even if he turned into ashes." Vampire Devil snorted coldly. He lightly tossed Wild Dog far away like throwing trash. After a while, Shaw Danon heard a muffled sound from far away, then a cry of pain. Did he fall on the ground or hit a tree? Vampire Devil sized up the Jadian junior disciple in front of him from head to toe, but did not immediately make a move. Instead, he frowned. Although his temperament was violent, he was not completely irrational. That day when he saw Jiang Lao San's corpse that the Blood Forger Hall had entrusted someone to transport back, besides being furious and grieved, he also discovered something strange. The way Jiang Lao San's flesh and blood dried up, no matter how he looked at it, it seemed to be caused by his sect's blood-sucking evil skill. Could it be that in this world, other than himself and Jiang Lao San, there was still someone else who practiced this strange skill? Of course, he did not know the fire stick in Shaw Danan's hand had the sinister orb passed down by Falcon's senior Elder Blackheart. But with his hundreds of years of cultivation experience, he quickly determined this murderer, even if he did not use Art of Vampire Hex, at least it was similar to Art of Vampire Hex. And this cultivation was definitely not low, probably not below him. So now that he saw Shaw Danan, he calmed down. First, take a closer look at this person. What is so strange about him? Just that he looked to the east, looked to the west, his brows furrowed, but he still could not see anything from head to toe. Then from toe to head, this lad was still just an ordinary Qing Yun sect disciple. There was nothing outstanding about him, and there was not even the slightest bit of the vampiric evil skill's cruel and ruthless aura. Shaw Danan stood where he was. His hair stood on end as he was stared at by the ghostly old man. He did not know who he was, but seeing he was with Cynical, he must be a Falcon. From their conversation, it seemed like they came to find Shaw Danan. That red skull glowing with red light in midair started to spin slowly again. Vampire Demon's voice came from behind the red light, coldly said, "Little bastard from Qing Yun's sect, was it you who killed my disciple Jiang Lao San?" Shaw Danan, startled, asked curiously, "Who is Jiang Lao San?" Vampire Devil paused for a moment. His heart was filled with anger. If it was before, he would have already used an art to suck this guy dry first. But thinking that this Qing Yun sect disciple actually had a high level of vampiric sorcery, no matter what, he had to get to the bottom of this. He suppressed his anger, but his voice sounded like a ghost wailing and wolf howling. "The one you killed in the Cave of Thousand Fangs at Kongsang Mountain with vampiric sorcery." Shaw Danan's heart shook. Then he heard the word vampire and immediately remembered. The horrible scene appeared in his mind. His heart tightened and subconsciously touched the fire stick on his waist. The fire stick was quietly pinned to his waist like a sleeping demon. Vampire Devil saw he did not speak for a long time, like he was lost in thought. He really did not take him seriously, 10 times more arrogant than the Jadian's masters who hunted him. His temper had always been ruthless, if not for the doubts in his heart. How could he have endured for so long? This was not a small matter, he roared. "Qing Yun's sex boy, return my disciple's life." Shaw Danan was surprised, took a step back. He could only hear the cries of ghosts around him, and the cold wind was biting cold. Even the back of his neck felt cold, and all the hairs on his body seemed to stand on end. The red skull in midair suddenly opened its ghastly mouth. 5 beams of black light flashed from the mouth, landed in front of Shaw Danan. After a moment, they stood up tremblingly. Shaw Danan was on guard. He knew the Falcon heretic's evil magic was strange, but when he took a closer look, his scalp tingled. The 5 figures that were gradually growing were 5 monsters with different appearances, but they all looked equally hideous. Some had bloody mouths, some had sharp fangs, and the stench of filth assailed everyone's nostrils. After a while, the 5 monsters had grown to a giant that was half a body taller than Shaw Danan. Behind them, Vampire Devil's hands formed a strange mark, tapped or patted on the red skull. The monsters moved accordingly. Obviously, they were controlled by the old devil. At this moment, as if contrasting with the red light emitted from the skull, even Vampire Devil's eyes seemed to be a little red. He sneered. His fingers suddenly tightened. With a hiss, he tightly gripped the red skull. Almost following his action, the eyes of the 5 giant monsters suddenly brightened, emitting a ferocious gaze. They raised their heads and howled to the sky. "Ah!" Shaw Danan's body shook violently. His mind was almost taken away. He could only feel the shadows flashed around him. The cry of the ghosts was like an ear-piercing, all-piercing into his head. The pain was unbearable. The 5 monsters howled to the sky, then charged at Shaw Danan at the same time. The wind howled. Shaw Danan tried his best to jump backward, barely dodged the attack. But before he could calm down, the 5 monsters attacked together. In a howling, they stabbed their claws into the ground. Shah Danon was in midair, holding the fire stick tightly in his hand. His heart was a little relieved. The fire stick seemed to feel something. It glowed with pale green light, gradually brightened. But before he could think, the claws of the 5 monsters stabbed deep in the ground seemed to pull on some kind of ground. In a long howl, the entire ground was pulled up. But what was more frightening was countless of nether spirits flew out from the ground, flew toward Shah Danon, and surrounded him in a blink of an eye. Vampire Devil's lips showed a cold smile, but then he frowned, because he was worried that this young man might have some special ability, so he did not use his special art of vampire at first. Instead, he used another magic that he had been practicing for years, 5 spirits manipulation. Using the 5 life ghosts as the medium, he forcefully captured all the dead spirits within 10 miles, then refined them with the art of ghost, turned them into the greedy nether spirits, and attacked Shah Danon. Although this Jadian disciple's cultivation was not low, he did not seem to practice any art of vampire. Did he see it wrong, or Cynical randomly chose a scapegoat for him in order to survive? While he was thinking, he suddenly felt something. His body shook, then he raised his head and looked forward. He saw where Shah Danon was surrounded by countless of white nether spirits. Suddenly, among the layers of white ghost eyes, a faint green light passed through the countless nether spirits and shined out. Chapter 126. That sound like something was torn, clear and loud. The night on Billows Hill became darker. Even the glimmer of the moon could not be seen anymore. In a lonely and somewhat desolate night, there was a faint sound of a long whistle. Even the waves on the distant sea seemed to be surging. That kind of cold feeling from the heart quietly passed by. The fire stick suddenly lit up. The originally black body of the stick was like a demon that suddenly woke up and opened its eyes. Instantly, the cold and ruthless energy spread out from Shah Danon's body. Countless of nether spirits flew up in fright, fluttered. In the distance, blood-sucking demon frowned, his face gradually turning solemn. He whispered to himself, such a heavy, killing intent. The 5 fate ghosts howled in unison. Their figures flashed, rose into the air, and landed around Shah Danon, surrounding him in the middle. At the same time, their ghostly claws tore at the air. A sharp sound rose. The nether spirits, who were panicking because of the mysterious evil energy on the fire stick, suddenly paused in the air. Shah Danon could clearly see that many of their human-shaped faces had a painful expression, but after a moment, they became cruel again. Ah! The shrill ghost howl broke through the air. Countless of nether spirits turned back and pounced on the only flesh body in the field. Shah Danon gasped. All around him were white ghost shadows coming at him. He could not react in time, but before he could block a few attacks, his body suddenly tripped. The pain from his feet almost made him fall to the ground. Shah Danon was surprised. He looked down and saw from the soil under his feet 2 giant ghost hands came out and grabbed his feet tightly. The ghost claws were sharp, almost pierced into his blood vessels. Around them, there were only 4 life ghosts left out of the original 5 life ghosts. Countless of nether spirits cheered in the air, screamed, and swarmed toward him. The greedy mouths were right in front of him. Shah Danon's face was pale, his muscles were twisted. Enduring the pain, his right hand formed incantation mark and drew in front of him. The fire stick rose into the air with a woo sound, flashed through a wall of light. The faint green light flashed again and again. The first few spirits that charged down couldn't stop their momentum and crashed into the black rod. They didn't even have the chance to scream before they turned into smoke. At the same time, Shah Danon's body shook again. He looked down and saw the ghost claws were like sharp blades, had already cut through his skin. Bright red blood flowed out and dripped on the black ghost claws. The fresh, sweet smell of blood immediately spread out in the air. Shah Danon startled. The innumerable spirits that were flying and shrieking in the sky were also taken aback. The light on the fire stick also seemed to tremble slightly, as if the aura connected to his bloodline had been stimulated. A moment later, countless spirits clamored and rushed down towards the luscious body of flesh and blood. But at the place where the wind was howling, someone raised his head and howled. The fire stick fell down. Shah Danon caught it. He did not care about the nether spirits above him. His eyes widened. There was red light flashing in his eyes. He stabbed it down, thrust down, through the ghost's claws, and through his own blood. The red blood attached to the black stick quietly seeped into it. All of a sudden, the red veins on the fire stick glowed. Pooh! Deep under the ground, there was a muffled sound. All of the nether spirits above suddenly stopped. Their faces were filled with fear. Like in front of them was the legendary devil that could burn souls. In the darkness, there was only the light of the fire stick flickering. In the distance, the red skull in Vampire Demon's hand suddenly made a low and crisp sound. On the right side of the skull, a piece suddenly broke off. Vampire Devil's expression changed drastically. He raised his head abruptly. This young man had destroyed one of his 5 ghost spirit manipulation array's life ghosts. Looking at the battlefield, the 4 life ghosts that had lost a corner could no longer control so many nether spirits. Gradually, the nether spirits escaped. The ground around Shah Danon suddenly sank half a foot deep. The ghost claws on his feet slowly loosened, turned into blood, and seeped into the ground. However, before he could even heave a sigh of relief, he heard the howling of the Aeon's spirits in the sky. He was shocked. He was about to resist, but the countless of nether spirits scattered. White light flashed, ghosts screamed, nether spirits danced, red light flashed. Red light? The red light that passed through the countless of white nether spirits was like lightning. The flashing skull was already in front of him. Shah Danon was about to jump up, but pain came from his feet. It affected the wound he just received. His body was unsteady, unable to dodge. The red skull opened its mouth and bit like a demon. Shah Danon used the fire stick to block in front of him. But in a split second, a dry hand came out from the mouth, grew 3 feet long. 5 fingers turned into a claw and grabbed heavily on his chest. Shah Danon's body shook. At that moment, the dry skin on the ghost hand suddenly filled up like blood was poured into it. His head was dizzy. He felt the blood in his body was boiling, flowing back to the wound on his chest. This was Vampire Devil's special skill, Art of Vampire. Seeing Shah Danon was controlled by his hand, he couldn't help but laugh. He shouted, raised his arm, and lifted the young man's body into the air, shouted, "Brat, give me back my disciple's life." Shah Danon was caught in his hand. All the blood in his body flowed backward. It was unbearable pain. His consciousness was fading. He used his last bit of strength to struggle and hit the ghost hand with the fire stick. But there was no strength, just like a feather. Vampire Demon did not put him in his eyes at all. He snorted, but in his heart he was thinking, this young man is nothing much. His cultivation is only average, but the magical weapon in his hand is very strange. After I suck his blood dry, I will bring this fire stick back to take a good look at it. At that moment, the fire stick landed on the hand that grabbed Shah Danon's chest. The dark green bead cut across the skin that was wildly sucking blood. The blood under the skin seemed like it was summoning something. Vampire Devil suddenly screamed. He let go of Shah Danon and jumped back. He looked at his hand. The skin that was filled up due to sucking blood almost instantly shriveled, even worse than before. In front of him, Shah Danon's body was about to fall. But the fire stick in his hand, especially the bead on top of the stick, was strangely brightened. It reflected the blood around it, shining red. Vampire Devil suddenly laughed coldly. I was wondering why Zhang Lao San would die like this. So the strange is here. Ha! There is such a rare treasure in the world. Brat, give me your life as well. Then he flew up. The ghost hand was like a claw. This time, it was aimed at Shah Danon's head. Poor Shah Danon had no strength to resist anymore. He was about to die under Vampire Devil's claw. Evildoer! A shout that was filled with rage rang out, and a scorching heat wave tore through the air in the blink of an eye. It was like a huge wave that swept through the entire forest. All the trees within 100 feet of them instantly withered. Only a brilliant fiery light fell from the sky and tore apart the dark clouds in the sky. Vampire Devil was shocked. This person's cultivation was very high, very unusual. He did not care about hurting Shah Danon. His hands quickly retreated. In the scream, the Red Skull's blood light brightened, and a blood-red light wall rose in front of him. Boom! Like the sound of thunder hitting the ground, the firelight smashed onto the blood wall. Hissing heat waves suddenly turned into a red celestial sword, vibrating endlessly. The huge force pushed Vampire Devil back several zhongs away. The force did not diminish, still pressing down like the roar of a mountain or the roar of a tsunami. Vampire Devil's face paled. He shouted and changed his incantation sign. His 10 fingers moved. 2 beams of blood light shot out from the eyes of the Red Skull, passed through the blood wall, and hit on the red sword. In the loud bang, the red sword flew back. Vampire Devil's body was also greatly shocked. He took a few steps back, then he steadied himself. Red flame, coldness rose in Vampire Devil's eyes. His face was as cold as ice. The scorching heat wave disappeared. Tion Belize slowly appeared. Behind him, another figure flashed. It was Serene. She caught Shah Danon, who was about to fall. Shah Danon saw his master, and Shenyang came. His heart warmed. Serene was worried. She asked quietly, "Xiao Fan, are you okay?" Shah Danon forced a smile. "I am okay." Shenyang dashed. Before he finished, he saw stars flash before his eyes. Then everything went black. He fainted. Serene frowned. Tion Belize ignored Vampire Devil, but looked at Shah Danon. After a moment, Serene finished checking. She took out a bottle, poured out a yellow elixir, and fed it to Shah Danon. Then she nodded to Tion Belize, said softly, "He won't die." After a moment, he looked at Vampire Devil. There was anger in his eyes. It's Art of Vampire. Anger flashed across Tion Bai's face. He turned his head and met Vampire Devil's eyes. "Vampire Devil, you're a famous person for hundreds of years. You use such cruel method to deal with a junior. Who do you think you are?" "Peh," Vampire Devil said fiercely. "Your disciple's life is life, but my disciple's life is not life." Tion Belize said coldly, "What does it have to do with your ghost disciple?" Vampire Devil's eyes focused, said, "He killed my disciple in Kongsang Mountain Cave of Fangs, so I came to kill him." "So what?" "Good," Tion Belize suddenly shouted. "Good kill." Vampire Demon was startled. Tion Belize smiled coldly. "I have always looked down on this disciple of mine, but today I have seen him. He is more promising than I imagined. He even knows how to get rid of evil for the people." Vampire Demon's anger was no small matter. He said angrily, "Good, good. You sons of Asterisk cheese. 100 years ago you hit me when I was down. You hunted me down. Today let me experience your scarlet flame sword again." Tion Belize took a deep breath. His right hand swept across the air. At that moment, Sword of Flame seemed to hear its master's thought, also vibrated with excitement. "Hundreds of years ago, you luckily escaped. Today, let me see how powerful your Art of Vampire is. Dare to bully my disciple?" That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.